Yeah, I've gone through Mark's work a lot. He has been one of the main teachers in my own personal, health development and understanding of natural law, along with many other great teachers. I have gone through his podcast at least twice. I have watched his natural law seminar, which is 8 hours. I've watched that at least 15 times. And the reason for that is because I understand that how repetition is one of the best ways to learn. And I am a kinesthetic learner. I am a hands on learner. I am also a visual learner. So I realized that, you know, by watching his material, watching other great teachers like Kris Nelson, who we all, have here, and learning from many teachers, if I use that repetition, then I could learn and get it, deep within my subconscious, because that's where you kind of want it to be. So then that way, once this topic comes up, or when you are talking, with people, you can get a firm grasp on not just at what you were saying and to portray this information, but also a level of consistency. Because one thing is when you are teaching this knowledge of objective morality and natural law is you have to be consistent and you have to be able to, break down your words and pretty much give them this idea because people are going to always come with their with their own personal worldviews, and unfortunately, they're gonna have their own definitions because that's what they have been indoctrinated. So it's like when they hear the term natural law, they may have incorrect um, understanding or version within their own mind. So you have to break through those barriers. How just like hell with how morality, since people have been indoctrinated to buy and to subscribe to this mind virus known as moral relativism, and they think that culture is what's going to dictate morality. They think morality comes from a piece of paper. Uh, they think that morality is going to come from religion. They think morality is going to come from authority. This is what we all have been indoctrinated to believe. So once you are taking in this information, it really starts to deconstruct and break down and erode your own worldviews. And we have to use the same techniques that the influencers use, that the social engineers use, as a means of have repetition to influence our own mind. And that's how I got to where I was at, going through a lot of Chris Nelson's work. Back in, was it about 2016, and like downloading podcasts and listening to those videos when I was at work or when I'm heading to work. Hell, I would have a podcast on and listen to them. Hell, when I was asleep, I literally went through a purging of getting out all of the incorrect, toxic information, and I created an environment to where I was receptive, so this new information could flow through me, and I would seek out certain teachers who was talking about objective morality, reading books on objective morality. Like Richard Weatherall's books. Came across how Locke and Rose's work. Which he comes at it from a non tyrannical external authority position, and taking in all of that knowledge and just taking it in and going through the trivium process to where I started to look at my own actions and my own behaviors to see what was I doing, not only to myself but to other people, that wasn't in line to this objective morality that I was starting to understand. And really, as I look back at my whole life, I pretty much always had a basic, understanding because my parents had raised me to, and the one thing that they would tell me is always think about the consequence. And that's one thing that I did learn, from them, is to always think about the consequence. And that's pretty much what, had led me toward this path of trying to educate and trying to influence people on objective morality. And the thing is is you can see it in society. You know, how you can see the effects. One thing that Kris Nelson talks about in his work is taking the stuff that we learn and then applying it to objective reality. So the people who try to say that, oh, morality is not objective, well, apply moral relativism to, how to society. That's the indoctrinated mind virus that people have subscribed to. But you can subscribe to incorrect means of thinking, incorrect information, and incorrect wrong ways of thinking is going to lead to incorrect forms of behavior. So yeah, that's pretty much how I've come to understand this, and I'm always, like going back and listening to the teachers who educated me. That way I don't forget or, have any kind of defaults in what I'm saying. Because I always do like to go back to, the great teachers who educated me or who I learned from, and constantly, he'll use that form of repetition to have, to get a better understanding and to, kind of stay harmonized with the teachings.
Welcome, Kris. I see you made it. Thanks for joining. Yeah,
Hey,
Hey, what's up, Kris?
hey. I came at 6, but nothing was going on, and then took a shower. I came back and oh, now it's going on. And then first
yeah.
time using Zoom with the new mic, and the sound wasn't working, so I gotta use the mic and I gotta use the headphones and the mic, and then it wasn't working, so I gotta turn the dial. Anyways, figured it out. I can hear you guys, and everything's good.
I do apologize. I'm 100% at fault here. I didn't check what time I wrote in the announcement I would start the meeting, and I decided to change the topic too to study the Kabbalion because I thought that I to understand objective morality, like Mark Passio teaches it, that I would need to have a firmer grasp on natural law, as he teaches it, and that would start with the Kabbalion, with the Hermetic seven Hermetic principles, because cause and effect is I want to say it's the fifth principle. Is that correct? Hermetic principle.
S- The sixth principle.
Oh, my fault. Oh yeah, the sixth. So yeah, I would start with the principle of mentalism, but since I've already dropped the ball, I don't want to essentially not talk about objective morality because that's the goal anyway. So might as well discuss it. Brandon has a note, which is super inspiring to me to take research into my own hands, and I would love to hear what Brandon has to say. But I I'm technically hosting this meeting, but I'm letting Brandon lead it since he's more knowledgeable than I am. And but anyone here, please ask questions, interrupt. I don't care. Uh, but also be respectful to Brandon because he is my guest. He's here to learn with us because I I believe you learn by teaching, and this is a lifelong journey of study. Um, so I'll pass it back to you, Brandon.
Yeah, and these teachings are very much important because we have to understand the consequences that follow with our behaviors, and those consequences can be good or bad. It just comes down to what we are putting out. That's why this knowledge of objective morality is so important. So, one thing that I wanted to kind of get people to understand is to truly learn this knowledge. You can learn through the negative, and that is called the apophatic inquiry. So, what you do is you can describe what something is by coming to an understanding what it is not. So, I kind of listed 20 things what morality is not. That way, people can start to get a better understanding and a kind of break down if they may, think that morality comes from this form of external source or this form of external control or a external form of authority. And and I have also used this in my own means of education. So morality is not a relative. It's just simply not because once you buy into that mind virus, you can start to justify any kind of behavior. You can justify murder. You can justify theft. You can justify, pedophilia. And of course, you can justify the most ultimate evil, of slavery. And that's why moral relativism is spewed in all aspect of society because if you have people at a lower level trying to justify why they are stealing, then therefore it gives the social engineers it pretty much gets them off the hook on why they are enslaving, humanity. Because with moral relativism, you can come up with any form of justification. Oh, I was just following orders. Oh, hell, I did it for a paycheck. Oh, hell, there was no other choice. Or, you may try to say, well, this person went out and have raped this woman for whatever, reason. But the key thing is you are taking something that does not belong to you. So morality is not a product of man. That's something that people still have a hard time, understanding is we don't get to create what's moral. Hell, again, that falls up under moral relativism. Morality is ingrained in the fabric of creation, and it applies to intelligent beings. How that's the whole purpose and understanding of how natural law. A set of non-man-made, binding, immutable, objective, and universal principles that govern the consequences of intelligent beings' behavior. Because we are ultimately talking about behavior. Behavior, what is it that we do, not just to ourselves, but to others, to nature, and to the earth? So, morality is not a product of any government because the government doesn't get to create what's moral. If I don't get to create what's right or wrong, you don't get to create what's right or wrong. So then how does a group of people magically come together and get to create what's right or wrong if that can't be done on an individual basis? You see, there's inconsistency there because you can literally go out and ask people, hey, do individuals get to create what's right or wrong? And they'll say no. Well, then you will say, well, does the government get to create what's right or wrong? And then they'll say yes. That's the cognitive dissonance. That's the internal schism. Fourthly, morality is not a product of any religion. Religion gives you a watered down version. It gives you their own form of what they call morality. But if it was actually true, then we would have a moral world because religion's been around since day one. So if the Christian version of morality was actually, true and based in truth, then what Christianity is still the biggest, I guess you could say, mainstream religion within the world, then we would have a more moral world. And then two, we see a lot of the atrocities that these religious cults have done throughout history. With the wars, the the pedophilia, and the genocide. We see this, happening right now, across the world. And then they'll make the claim, God told me to do this, or God told us to, to start this crusade. Well, what kind of God are you communicating with? Because the true God of creation would not want you starting wars, would not want you, destroying rights and freedom. So there are many types of gods, lowercase, but there's only truly one, one creator or creation. Morality does not come from any book, or it cannot be found from, within any book. Morality is written inside the human heart. So there isn't one book that's going to teach you how to be moral. The Bible is not going to teach you how to be moral. There can be certain teachings, certain references, certain symbolic understanding how that can be found, and you can relate that towards moral teachings like within the Bible and the teaching of Jesus and the golden rule, which the golden rule was taught about in pretty much all forms of religion. Do not do unto others as you will not want done unto you. And again, I say that in the negative because people have a fucked up mentality these days. How they may want you to do something fucked up to them that you may not do to something else. But if you know what you don't want done to you, then don't do that or advocate that toward help another person or another group. Morality is not found in a group. It's not. So you're not going to join any group. You're not going to join any crowd. You're not going to join any cult. You're not going to join any collective and come to an understanding of what morality is. First off, no group has a conscience. No group has rights. No group is able to think. So a group is unconscious. A group is immoral. So there is no morality found in any group. It's only found within the individual. Morality is not about abandoning personal responsibility. Because if you truly are a moral person, you truly understand right and wrong, you will want to take personal responsibility. You won't try to shirk it. You won't try to give it hell away to any form of external source or any form of authority. You won't try to give it to any deity. You won't try to give it. You won't try to give it to any savior. You will take that personal responsibility because it's the moral right thing for you to do. Morality is not about ignorance. It's not. Morality is actually based in knowledge. It's about knowing. It's not about believing, how that you did the right thing. It's not about feeling, how that you did the right thing because belief and feeling can lead you toward incorrect, immoral behavior. It's about knowing, and that starts within the mind. Morality is not based in any form of man-made authority. Authority claims to be the one that gets to make what's right. That's what the word authority means. It has the main root word, author. An author is one who writes. So the so-called external authority are the ones who make a claim that they get to, subscribe and scribble down what is right. And as soon as that next person leaves their authority, the next person comes in and scribbles down, what is right or wrong. And they may even relinquish or change, what they said, was right. So, hell again, how does that create any form of consistency? It only creates more and more inconsistency. It creates more and more chaos, and it only creates more and more entropy. Just like you have all these people who think that the Constitution, grants you rights, or this piece of paper, will grant you rights. Well, if you can write something on paper, then can't someone else write something on paper to take away those same rights? It's such a contradiction because hell again, like I said earlier, if no individual can create what's right, then how can those same individuals come together to magically form or grant or give or say what is right? It's the consistency because the truth is consistent. The truth is never inconsistent. It's only the lies that are inconsistent. So, hell again, the consistency here. Let's see. Morality is not about denying objective reality. We got so many people in today's day and age, that just want to deny objective reality, say these things aren't going on. They don't want to understand, that their own psyche is such a, importance. And we see, people going into these forms of technological, reality, with the goggles on and stuff like that. Hell, I forget, what they're called, but they're trying to deny reality because that form of escapism keeps you from the true understanding within your own self. Because all of that is just a distraction. And you see, moral people have focus. Moral people are willing to take that personal responsibility. So moral people are willing to do the right thing. trying to escape from, her reality by way of drugs or, alcohol or, like, these stupid, these stupid Apple, goggles is the wrong way to go about, trying to understand, her reality. Oh yeah, they call it augmented, her reality or something like that. That's the incorrect way to try to come to an understanding of that which is. That's the incorrect way of trying to come to an understanding of yourself, because that's really what we are truly here, how to do is to learn hell about ourselves, learn about this objective reality that we all share, to do the shadow work and to end slavery. The end slavery thing should come first, but unfortunately, if you don't truly know yourself and you ignore reality, you can never get to the point to where you can get in any position to try to, help educate people to try to help end this slave system and, help this condition of slavery that we all are in. Morality is it's not about apathy. It's not. It's all about empathy. You have to care for the truth, you know. You have to care for the truth because once you care for the truth, you will seek the, help. You will go out and you will seek it. Then once you seek it, you will embody it. Then once you embody it, you will start to teach it. So you have to have that care principle. You have to have that, that heart-based intelligence to actually start that journey. Because to discover truth, how nowadays is so much easier than it was thousands of years ago. Hell, with the technology, with the phones, with the hell, laptops, with the desktops, with all the wonderful devices that we have, it's really not that hard to to come to an understanding of this stuff. It just takes time. It's actually harder for people to deny it and not come to an understanding of it because we still live in the age of information with all the propaganda, with all the censorship. There's still a lot of knowledge that is out there. But unfortunately, because people don't have that care, they'll rather sit down and watch the football game, and just get into mindless forms of entertainment. Well, what does entertainment mean? To enter, to go within, to tame means to hold, and mint means mind. So to go in and hold the place of the mind. So when you're being entertained, something is holding the place of your conscious mind, and then therefore they are putting in that subconscious programming, putting in that subconscious, propaganda. Morality is not based about it's not about in a belief. I kind of already talked about that. Morality is not hell about feelings, hell again, it's not about hell what you feel. This is not about being hell overstimulated. Hell, this is about being in control of, how we feel. Because you don't want your emotions to dictate your behavior. Because then that's just going to lead to more chaos. That's going to lead to more, entropy. Hell, that's going to lead to more moral relativism. Morality is not about cowardice, you know. You see too many people who may even understand this knowledge or may understand certain aspects to this condition, but yet they are not engaged. They are not activated. They are just sitting back, like on the sidelines, just cheering people on. No, to take action, you see, because morality is about taking action, 'cause that's why we say right action. What is a right? A right is an action that does not initiate violence or theft toward another sentient being. So, again, a right is a action. Like that's what we are talking about, human behaviors. So you may understand it mentally, but if you're not taking right action, then do you truly understand it? You may think that you do, but until you are actually aligned to where your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions are not in any form of contradiction, then you're not really taking right action because right action is going to lead toward courage. But hell, again, the initial spark is that care. You have to care for truth before you even start, that journey. Morality is not about abandoning conscience. That's what too many people want to do. Abandon conscience. There's no such thing as my conscience or your conscience. There's only conscience because Hell, what is conscious? Con science, to know together, conscious, knowing the difference between right and wrong from an objective standpoint. So we cannot abandon conscience. And we see that, we see it by order followers. We see it in the medical world. We see it in the media. People know that they're doing something wrong. And what do? They go against their conscience, which does what? It creates trauma. It creates an internal schism. So we have to obey conscience. We have to do what we know is right. And that's at like any cost. People think that, everybody has a price. No, that is 100% incorrect. Immoral people may have a price, but moral people do not have a price. There is no amount of money that you can throw in front of a moral person to get them to do something immoral, because they will obey conscience. They will stick to first principle. Morality is not about violence or condoning violence. Morality is the complete opposite. And what do we see people doing? They may not be actually engaged in violent behavior, but they condone violence of the state. They condone violence when it's their group of people who are doing the violence. And hell, again, violence is always wrong. It doesn't matter who is doing the violence. So you have to ask yourself, let's define, definitions. What is violence? It is a behavior, because again, violence is a form of action. It actually means to violate from its etymological, understanding. It means to use a behavior which initiates coercion. And I'm not going to say force, because force can be used for good or force can be used for bad. But once that force aggresses upon someone's free will, then that's when it becomes coercion, and that's when it becomes violence. You're talking about physical behavior that goes against free will because you are violating someone else's rights. So we look and see what the government is doing on a daily basis using violence. What happens when you get pulled over? If you don't obey, they will escalate toward violence, violating your free will. Morality is not about sacrificing first principles. It's not, because morality should be your first principle. And hell, again, what does the word principle mean? First, foremost, at the beginning, it's going to be that foundation. It's going to be that initial building block. That way, other principles can be stacked on top of it, like integrity, courage, willpower. Care would be the roots. Then morality would be that first initial building block. And again, I'm going to say that care is going to be the roots. Care is going to be the part that you don't see. But morality is going to be that initial building block, that foundation, or like that basement, level. Because without a strong foundation, without a strong sense of morality, I don't care what you do at life, you are going to fail. You are going to be sucked up into this slave system. You have to have a strong foundation and understanding in objective morality. Morality is not about, coercion. It's not. Actually, morality is about consent. You know, we have to we have to respect people's free will choice. We can disagree. Hell, we cannot, you know, condone, her right behaviors, because there's certain right behaviors that I still may not, condone. But that's their business. That's their problem. Hell, that's their, hell body, you know. So it's not about, hell using coercion. We have to get back to free will consent. Like, how can you really build something with someone else if you are using coercion, if you are using violence? Nobody is going to want to deal with you. Morality is not about following orders. Hell, again, following orders is the complete opposite of obeying conscience. Because think about it. When you follow an order, do you go through that process of thinking, hell, do you sit here and say, hey, is what I'm about to engage in, hell, is it moral? Is it right? Or Do they just say, "Hey, go and arrest that person," and you just do it? You don't think about it. So you're actually abandoning free will choice. You are abandoning your ability to think. You are abandoning what makes you human. Free will choice, being able to think, like with our neocortex, because judgment hell happens in the prefrontal lobe. That's what separates us from our lesser brothers and sisters within the animal kingdom. So once we abandon that, we just go back to a stimulus, response. The stimulus is whoever gave you the order, and the response is you following out on that order, skipping that crucial aspect of thinking. So following orders is always evil because you take out the human aspect. It doesn't matter what the order is, it doesn't matter what the job is, it doesn't matter who you are. Following order is always evil. We have to get back to thinking. We have to get back to using the trivium. We have to get back to using discernment. We have to get back to judgment because judgment is a huge part of life. Judgment is a huge part of survival and evolution. And morality is one of the biggest parts of evolution. That's why we are not evolving because we've lost that moral aspect. We've lost that moral, health component. And lastly, morality is not about supporting any government outside of the internal government. So morality is not about supporting any external government because that is just simply mind control. And government is just a euphemism for slavery. So moral people don't support slavery. Moral people use their voices and their willpower to say no to slavery. Moral people use their voices and their willpower to stand up to tyranny. So I'm gonna hold it right there. I kind of hope Kris is still here because I kind of want to hear what he has to say. I always respect, how his words. So, and he's taught me so much. So,
Yeah, so we're talking about understanding objective morality, right? Is my sound okay? Because I don't know, I was playing with the knobs, so I don't know if my mic is too loud or if I should turn it down.
oh no, hell, you coming in
No.
good. Yeah.
All right. Um, yeah, those sorry, I was well, it's not related, but I lost my job, so I'm like focused on my job. That's why I'm like sick and I got this horrible cough. And anyways, I was reading stuff on trying to upskill myself because trying to find a job is like fucking insane now. Apparently, you gotta
Yeah.
like network on LinkedIn to network to people to find a job because your job application is like ignored. I'm in programming and coding and web development, and I don't know. The prospects don't look too good for me, so I'm like focusing on that. Anyways, it's worse than a job. It's like from morning till night, I'm like trying to upskill and like, anyways, improve my skills to try to fucking find a job because not looking good. But yeah, on this topic, sorry, um, the I didn't catch all the 20 points, but you got a list somewhere? Did you make a doc of those?
Hell, I just kind of just came off the head, and I wanted to come from the apophatic, inquiry, to kind of get people to, pretty much come from the negative understanding, because the best way to understand what a right is to understand what rights are not. How we focus so much and we hear so much on rights, but we don't really focus so much on what rights are not, because that's really what it's all about is stop doing behaviors that we don't have a right, to do. So I just kind of focused on those and I didn't really, um, get too much into rights because I wanted to come from the apophatic, inquiry to try to get people to understand what rights are by understanding, what rights are not.
Yeah. Well, what I was wondering was, did you have like 20 points, like bullet points of like one, two, three, four, five that you were like you knew what to go through to
Oh
talk
yeah,
about, or you
yeah,
were just okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That's what I thought. That'd be cool if you could share them in the Telegram after, and people could just take a look at all those 20 points. But apophatic inquiry is definitely the uh, the principal methodology for comprehending objective morality. Um, I was almost done my like the next part 4 of my natural law, the science of morality presentation, and then I lost my job, so I was like, I had to stop that and like totally focus on that. But yeah, it's almost done, and it's huge. But I'll talk about some parts of it, and that's the apophatic aspect is the the mindset of saying no to negate, as you talked about early on, and uh, and that's encompassed with the word no as the lost word, as Mark Passio has said it, and that's attributed to the sacred feminine of the non-aggression principle, and that's why that's the negative aspect of not doing things. That's the most important part of understanding objective morality is through that what you're not allowed to do, as you just explained in those 20 points of all these things that we're not allowed to do. Um, and coupled with that is the sacred masculine, which is when that is violated, uh, what you can do, which is creating harm towards another, but it's not initiating harm. So when the sacred feminine is violated and the lost word of no is violated and someone infringes on that boundary, then you have the right to enact the sacred masculine, and that's what Passio has termed um, the last word. So you got the lost word, no, and then you got the last word, and that's you have the last say on retribution, justice, rectification, restitution, and collecting on a debt that was made because you were violated. Um, I wanted to just touch on that point that these two parts go together, and it all starts. You have to understand what you were talking about, the apophatic inquiry, the apophatic pathway towards understanding morality, which is to the things you're not allowed to do. And then if that ever gets violated, well, of course we're not supposed to initiate harm, but then you can when there's a debt collected, there's a there's an allowance for a collecting on the debt. So someone has to pay back something that is owed, and there's nuances about regarding which violation occurred and how do you collect on it. And my general position as it is now, it's not concrete, but as it's like a more fluid understanding that I could give is that apart from um, in terms of creating the harm to someone who's abdicated their own rights by violating the rights of others, because we have a shield, and that's the natural law boundary is like a shield we all have. And if you pierce someone else's shield, then you're automatically removing your own shield. So you're no longer protected by that natural law boundary. And there's only one that I would say is not okay to like reciprocate back. And that would be rape. So you're not going to rape someone because they raped someone else, but you can take their other property as a recompense. So if someone's being raped, well, they have a right to murder the other person. They have a right to assault the other person. They have a right to after the fact. So if there's also two aspects, which it's in my presentation. It's not fully completed. There's what's the when you engage in the sacred masculine of self-defense, there's a present component and a future component for the retribution, restitution, and the collection of a debt. So when it happens in the moment, that's in the present, and you can respond in the present, but you can't always respond in the present to certain acts of injustice. And in order to rebalance things and to bring back justice, that's when things happen in the future relative to the incursion, relative to the violation. So at that point, you could, trespass on someone's property in order to go assault them, or trespass on them in order to go take their other property, because you could choose to say, well, you owe me, you have to work it off your debt for what you violated me for. Um, So I just wanted to mention that, like, the only one that I would say you can't go do because it just doesn't make sense is to go rape someone, to take to steal their sexual association. But the other ones, in terms of going to demand a debt for to equate the scales and bring back justice for an injustice, um, a person or a group or a society could demand other forms of harm creation, which the person has abdicated, I said, because they've removed their own shield to not be violated through the violation of another. And that's the only one that I would say just doesn't make sense as a way to try to collect anything. But I'm like all the other property um, infringements would be sorry, all the other property harms, the harms of property of the thefts wouldn't be thefts because they would be a way to try to say that, you know, you're not allowed to do that. And there's different ways you can go about it. Like someone could just say, okay, you owe me if I steal $100, well, you can't just say, well, give me back the $100. Because that's what's that going to do, what that does if society operated that way, or the future society or whatever, if anyone operates that on a one-on-one basis, then that just allows someone to just keep going to take someone's $100. And the only consequence they're going to face is, oh, well, all I have to do is just give it back. So I'm just going to keep trying it until I get away with it, until someone doesn't catch me and they don't know it was me. And then I get the $100. So there's no actual consequence because all you have to do is give back what you took. So there's no actual consequence. It's just returning what you took. There has to be the actual thing that you took plus an extra, sorry, as a consequence, as a punishment, in order to incentivize not doing that behavior for everyone else to learn, you do this, well, this is what can happen to you. Because if it's just you pay back what you took, then you can just keep doing it indefinitely into the future and just hope to get away with it because no one's going to make you suffer in any aspect of what your property initially was. So if you only had
different from the court system as it exists now.
I don't know how the court system operates exactly. I just a bunch of bullshit, but
okay, yeah, but you said you have all the rights to do things back to people if they do certain things to you, and that is what the court system does. It forces these things on people as recompense for the harms.
yeah.
So how is this
in some cases, yeah, in some cases they get things wrong and they just
but you got it
people
right
who didn't do any harm just because a law was created that says you must do this even though you have a right to not to do it, or you can't do this, which you do have a right to do. Like, look at all the people in the United States that are in jail for smoking cannabis. You know, there's one guy that was I don't know, in Firefox there's like pocket little news stories, and there was one guy that was in jail for 35 years for attempting to purchase marijuana. And that's just mind-blowing, you know. So these are the examples that it has nothing to do with natural law, and that's what the law system is an attempt to be God, because law is something that pre-exists in existence. It's not created
do you
by
have
humans.
evidence of this?
Evidence of what?
That this is so I'm one of the people who's very skeptical that natural law is as objective as claimed. I think it's a good idea. I think there's a lot of there's some good stuff there. However, my biggest gripe is that it is claimed to be a science, it's claimed to be objective, and yet I've yet to see evidence of this. What is the evidence that this is objective?
Are you not familiar with history? And like
I am. In fact, history seems to show that the most successful people are the ones who are the most ruthless and cunning. Which, if this was as objective as, say, gravity as is claimed, you wouldn't really see that. You'd see things along the most efficient path, which would be natural law. So why do we not see this?
And then two, are you familiar with occultism?
Okay, you didn't answer my first question.
Right. Well, right. But you see, like, I'm trying to get an understanding of where your mindset is, because when the people come out and say they want physical proof, like, it's like with consciousness, you can't show physical.
At the very least, I need physical proof.
Right, but with some things, you can't just, like, touch it with your hands, and we're not going to get you to understand this just from this one episode. there has to be time. There has to be
That's fine,
research.
but
So what
what
I'm
can you point me toward?
I'll handle this one, Brandon, if you don't mind. So I just want to ask you one question. Just you say yes or no. I assumed everyone here was familiar with Mark Passio. Are you familiar with Mark
I
Passio
am.
as
I
well?
have watched through his 8 hour or 12 hour, whatever hour thing.
9 hours, yeah.
3 different times,
Okay.
2 of which on my own, one of which as part of a analysis done by several other people, referred to as the junk science of natural law, where they walk through the entire thing and they want to see what's it all about. And they come to largely the same conclusions I come to, which is that it's really not as objective as claimed. One of the core issues is who gets to find harm? Why is one definition of harm going to be objective over another?
Okay, so
One other thing. So I'd recommend that as a rebuttal, certainly.
That's
well,
not really that's
let's
not really a rebuttal because you're talking about the initiation. Like the difference between harm and violence.
Well, we have people in the
very
world who
distinct.
believe that if you don't use their proper pronouns, the offense they feel is harm against them, and thus you are a moral person for having offended them.
But that's
Would
coming
that
from an
not fall under?
emotional standpoint, and how that would be violence because if they are
So they're
initiating
correct.
violence, no. I said they would be in you. You're never correct if you are initiating violence. You see, you're saying harm.
Yes, but these people believe that that is violence.
yeah, but it's not objective. So do you
Okay.
know what is a harm for you? Let's see if you can define it. What is harm?
Certainly harm could be anything I don't like. I could make it that broad
So if
if
I
I
don't
wanted to.
like bananas and you eat bananas, you're harming me?
Well, then that gets into the next one, and I would say no.
It
But
just
I
it
would
doesn't make
get into the next
sense.
one.
Your own definition.
Get into the next one and say, why should I care whether or not I'm harming you?
So I just wanted to see what you would define if you had an accurate definition, and you don't seem to. So I just wanted
Well,
to
I
see
could say
what
I
you
could
did.
say the easy
So-
one of physical violence, certainly.
Okay. So do you know what property is?
Generally, whatever you are capable of holding, more or less.
No, because I could come up to you and take your car, and now I'm holding it. It's not
Yeah.
my rightful
Yeah,
property.
you're holding it because I am not able to take it back.
Yeah, you
like
lack a lot of understanding. I don't know if this is the place for it, because this is going to get into
oh
like
no
the
no no no.
spaghetti.
Did you guys say this is objective? I am asking you these questions.
I'm just saying from your mindset and where your
Yeah.
current knowledge is, I'm just stating things that you lack a lot of understanding. So we could get into it, but it'd
Well,
be
no,
like
this
the
is
spaghetti
the
thing of
thing.
explaining everything to you one point at a time when you have not done the
Yeah.
prerequisite work of going through a lot of material to understand it for yourself. So I
Right.
don't know,
So you don't
Jerry,
have
if this is.
anything you can point.
I'm gonna-
I could explain everything to you,
I'm gonna
but
let you guys speak, but I
it's
have
not
a
really.
disclaimer to make.
Go ahead.
Hey, I'm here all night, guys, because this is what I'm here for, to learn. Asking questions is how we learn. Helps us think outside the box. Now, I know Brandon is recording. I'm recording. I don't know if you plan on uploading this, Brandon, to your media channels. So I just want to give that
Yes.
disclaimer that this. Well, are you gonna upload this to your media channels?
Yes.
All right. So if you don't want to be in this video, that's a disclaimer. Do not appear in the video.
That's fine.
Because and if you do not want to be in the video, just type a question in the chat and I'll ask it for you. That's it.
Yeah, and like the reason I bring up even the things like the car example is because, again, this is claimed to be as objective as gravity, which means you should have evidence of it in the real world. You shouldn't need to go through a process of, what was it called? Apotheosis, was that the word? To find this. You should be able to say, here's the experiments, here's how I can show that this is how it works, and here's how I know it is not another way.
Let's start with what you're originally saying. I'll do a few points, but I'm not gonna just as a preamble to state things. I'm not gonna answer every single question you have, because I can already tell that you lack a lot of prerequisite understanding. But I'll address the main thing that you said, which, how do you determine if it's objective? So, do you agree that things that happen in reality are objective, or they're not objective?
Yes, I agree that that is objective.
Okay. So when an action happens that's happening in reality, is an action objective or it's not objective?
Yes.
So any action that happens is occurring in existence in reality, which therefore it is objective.
Yes.
Okay, so that is what behavior is. Behavior is an action. So any behavior that
Yes.
occurs is objectively occurring.
Yes, it is objectively
Okay, so
occurring.
that's a base point for to get towards an understanding of what objective morality is. So we start with behavior. Now, when a behavior occurs, some behaviors can affect someone's property, and some behaviors can have nothing to do with someone's property. If I go outside for a walk and I just walk, that has nothing to do with anybody else. I just go walk around my house, or I just walk in my room. That's not doing anything, but that's a behavior that occurs in objective reality. It's an objective behavior. Now, whether someone else can verify that I did that or not is a different issue, and that's where you come to the understanding of what truth is and how you can know what is a truth. So someone can make a claim that I can make a claim that 10 minutes ago I walked around in my room, but you won't be able to know that unless you can verify it. So you can believe what I said as a claim, or you can reject it because you don't know if it's true. But the proper position would be agnostic, which is you don't know if I actually did it or not. So when we're talking about objective, it relates to what's true as well. So things can happen, but you cannot actually know and verify or demonstrate that they actually happened, even though they did happen. Now, when you get to morality, what we're talking about is harm. So let's go from there. When we do a behavior, what I was talking about was regarding property. So that's why I asked you before, do you know what property is? So property, if you look into a lot of voluntarism or libertarianism, like Rothbard or Mises or other people, you'll understand that to obtain property, you can do it through two means in terms of non-aggression. Do you know what the non-aggression principle is?
I'm aware that generally speaking, it is that you are not supposed to physically assault other people. I'm also aware that some people's rebuttal to that is that you could get around that by getting someone else, coaxing them into aggression against you so that you can then have justification for aggression against them. But that's a whole other issue.
Okay, so the non-aggression principle is essentially that you do not initiate harm. So that's what we're trying to get at is what does this mean? So through that principle, let's just set that aside for now, but to get to property, um, property, there's rightfully acquired property and wrongfully acquired property. So if you want to get more into this, apart from this discussion, there's also the I made 3 presentations so far on the science, natural law, the science of morality. Part 1 was on rights. So this I go through on rights, and then I talk about slavery, and then I talk about freedom. So you could check that out. In total, it's probably like 10 hours. So probably you won't, but I'm just saying I talk about it more there. When you're talking from trying to get from behavior to morality, you have to go through an understanding of what rights are. So there's rightfully acquired rights and wrongfully acquired rights. And this also this requires an understanding of what the word right and wrong is. So do you understand that there are behaviors that are right and wrong, or that there is none and people can just make it up?
I take the stance that people make a lot of claims of what they determine as right and wrong, but really everyone's just going towards their own goals. And I try not to fall into the trap of saying I'm a good person, and therefore implicitly people not doing what I'm doing are bad. I just try to be honest and admit that if I'm taking actions, they're based on my experiences, my goals, my understanding at the time, based on all these things, wherever my knowledge bases are coming from. And that's ultimately why I'm doing it. I try to leave the right and wrong stuff out of it because I'm trying not to create artificial enemies implicitly via saying, hey, I'm a good person or I'm doing right action. Therefore, people not being that way are bad.
All right, well, let's
So
forget about the characterization of good or bad or whatever you want to say it. We'll forget about that as a good person. We'll get back to the trying to understand property and therefore harm. And we need to start with right and wrong, because if you don't have an understanding of that, then you can't know what behavior is actually right or wrong, and hence creating harm or not. Since you already admitted that there is objective reality, what is an objective reality is what truly occurred. It came into existence. An action either came into existence or it did not. So it occurred in objective reality or it did not occur in objective reality. So you already concede that there is truth, and that means there is something that is, if someone makes a statement like I was talking about 10 minutes ago, I walked around in my room, I'm either right or I'm wrong about that statement. Either it is true or it is false. Either it is correct or incorrect. So all these things are synonymous on either side of those polarities. Something that is true is right, is correct. Something that is false is wrong, is incorrect. So these are your two polarities that you can choose from when you're talking about assertions or negations of what did or didn't occur in objective reality.
Yeah.
So from that point, you can also go forward with that can be applied to behavior. I'm just trying to think of my next presentation because this is all explained in there. When you think of behavior, there is behavior that is also true and correct and right in terms of the harm it creates. So when we're talking about harm, we have to get back to property. And the properties you have, as I was alluding to with libertarianism and the non-aggression principle, is that there's two ways to acquire property. And one is through mixing your labor with property that is not owned by others. So there's a tree in a forest, and you go to the tree and you chop it down. So you mixed your labor with a natural resource, something that is just there, like a rock. You could go mining for rocks and find some gold or some coal or whatever, some ore, some iron ore, and process it. So all these things you're doing with your property. So I'll go back even further because we need to establish some grounding rules, some grounding definitions so that we don't get lost. Is that you own you. No one else owns you. Do you understand this?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's called the self-ownership. And that's your first natural right, your first natural property. Everything begins with this. So you own your body. And therefore, what comes from your body is you own that as well. So whatever you do with your actions, you're responsible for your actions, you own them. Whatever labor you do, you own the fruits of your labor. Do you agree with that? Like I was mentioning,
I'd like to agree with it.
the
Many
tree or
people
the
do
rock.
not.
Tree
Can,
or the
can
rock.
I interject for a second and maybe help iron this out a little bit? So I have a definition here in my my dictionary of word origins for the word morality, and I'd like to read that here if you don't mind. So moral, excuse me, I need my old man glasses. Latin, mos, meaning custom, is the starting point of the English family of morality. Words as is plural, mores, was acquired by English as Moors in the 20th century. Its derived adjective, moralis, was coined, according to some, by Cicero as a direct translation, Greek ethikos, ethical, to denote the typical or proper behavior of human beings in society, and was borrowed directly into English in the 14th century. So essentially that means we're talking about society. Morality is related to society. It's not related to nature. I think natural law is a difficult thing to say because it's not something that you can prove is dictated by like God. You're talking about karma or something that, you know, you're talking about rights of society, and you're talking about like something that God is going to, a wrath of God that's going to happen. What's the difference? You were talking before about the $100. You know, like you have a right to, you don't have a right to take more than $100 from someone. You know, if someone takes $100 from you, you don't have a right to take their life or whatever. You know, you don't have a right to take more than that $100 from them.
No, that's not what I was saying.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anyways,
what was it? You're talking about things in society. You know, and there's a lot of gray area here. It's not a cut and dry thing.
It's really not that gray, but
No,
Okay,
that's,
well, I mean, I'm with you guys on the idea of, you shouldn't do. I like the Mark Passio thing of don't do anything to other people that you don't want done to you. Wrap it up. Let's have a nice day, guys. We could call it quits here because there is a lot of gray area. There are some things that people like having done to them that I don't like having done to me. I don't like being tied up and having my ass whipped, but there are people that like that. It's just the reality. But so we're talking about society. We're not talking about what God is gonna or the reality is going to dictate to you. Although you could say that if you are a good person, you'll attract good people and you'll have a good experience in life, that's kind of what we're going down here. But not everybody's going to want to experience that. And, like forcing that on people, like what you're talking about, is the good old fashioned libertarian drama argument that we could talk to about until the end of time. And actually, I thought we were coming here to talk about the Kabbalion.
Well, there were societies that, that had slavery. I mean, hell, was that moral? How there were societies, how their standard was to partake in genocide. Hell, was that moral? So
no, but let me ask you a question. What if I want to sell myself into slavery? You telling me I can't?
No,
slavery,
you can't.
No, you can't because slavery is always.
Why not? Why not? You tell me I can't. You
look. Hold on a second.
I'm listening.
There was questions by Ryan, and we were trying to establish. So, in order to understand things, you have to define words, and then you have to build up a definition of words that create concepts, and then other concepts can be linked in order to form higher abstract concepts that are based on initial foundations of words.
So correct. So we need to define morality.
Wait. Now you're interjecting with another subset. So we have two people who have questions that we're trying to address, but we still haven't addressed the first one.
Are you able to lower?
We're not actually going to finish anything if we don't actually come up with definitions.
Yeah. So let's define our term. Define morality for me.
Also, Nick, your mic gain is really high and you're very scratchy and everything as a result of it. I'm not sure.
My apologies. I've been dicking around with Zoom and playing with my microphone, so I apologize.
But yeah, the one thing I do want to say, because I know this can be getting kind of stressful and whatnot, is that I do let's put this in. I like the idea that you guys have. I like that you have this concept of natural law and everything. My specific thing has been with it is that when it is taken to the next level and claimed to be objective and essentially baked into reality, that requires actual real world evidence, and I've never seen that. I am not saying that.
Explain. Well, that takes time because I have to use words to establish definitions, and I have to see if you're following me in my explanation. And if you have objections, then I have to address those objections. So it takes a long time. And then if someone else like Nick,
you did say that you have
talk about other things, then that detracts from me attempting to answer you, and then I have to try to answer him, and then that's why I'm saying it goes into a spaghetti of we're going into a bunch of tangents and trying to address a bunch of things at the same time when we should just focus on one thing at one time, and then we can address the next thing afterwards and build from there.
But you did say this is all covered more or less in your 10 hours of presentation you've done so far, right? Because I could save you the time and say, I'll just go look at that.
Well, what I'm talking about here is in my next one, which isn't out yet, which could be 10 hours itself, because it's the longest, the most amount of slides that I've ever made for any presentation, and usually even 20 slides can take me 4 hours to talk about in depth. I do things in great detail, as Brandon knows. I'm very verbose to try to expound upon an understanding to get people to understand them in great detail and clarity. That's what high definition is. So I'm trying to bring the 4K understanding so that you can see a lot of the pixels and see the whole picture. But that's why I'm trying to define the terms here to get to what is objective morality and how it can be objective. That's what I've been trying to do, but that's why I have to explain different concepts and words that are attributed and define those words so that you can build up your understanding.
Would you rather I just wait for your presentation? If you're going to do that anyways, would you rather I just wait for said presentation? And you guys can talk about other aspects?
Jerry, I don't know, Jerry might have popped out there, but I don't know what the quorum of this forum is. What are the rules or whatever?
I'm paying attention. Honestly, I want to address Nick's what he said about the Kabbalion. So I was wrong, Nick, because I said I was going to open this meeting and have a discussion, study group on objective morality at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and I lost track in the Do It Live podcast, and I got the times wrong. That's completely on me. So there were people who were here expecting to talk about objective morality, and they had notes. So I wanted to redeem myself and say, you know what, this meeting will be on we'll discuss objective morality, because that's my goal anyways, to get to understand this. And I thank you for your time, Kris and Brandon, to teach us what you know. And I'm here to learn, so I'm gonna keep this open until you guys leave. uh, and with that being said, I'm here paying attention, Kris. So I appreciate you being here, and thanks for the questions, Ryan and Nick. 'Cause I've had these questions myself. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever had these questions, but I want to make sure you get to Ryan's questions and Nick's questions first.
Yeah. So the objection was, how can morality be objective? And one thing that I know can be confusing is the term natural law. So Ryan and Nick, I would invite you to just throw that out for now and forget about the term natural law. If we're going to talk about the subject of objective morality, let's just try to understand those words and how they relate to reality first, before we try to understand a more broad term that can be more ambiguous. So we'll just focus on objective morality, and then that'll help in understanding what is referred to by natural law, by Mark Passio and other philosophers through the ages have used this. It's not Mark Passio that invented it. It's if you look at it in philosophy, it's called natural law theory. But if we get back to how can you know that morality is objective, I believe I was on trying to build up from the point of property. And there's two ways that you can come to know what rightful and wrongful property is. And so first you start from the property of yourself, and that you own yourself. And this will also answer one of the objections from Nick, which was if you want to sell yourself into slavery, no, that's not something you can do rightfully, because you forever own you. You cannot ever give up ownership of you. It's an impossibility. Maybe with the twisted transhumanism, they'll devise a way to subvert your own consciousness and make you choose to do things that you don't want to do. I don't know what technology could do, but as it stands now, the way things are in natural reality is that you have a body, and that body belongs to you. You will your hands to move, you will your mouth to move, you will the words to come out of your mouth. You are in control of your body. There is no one else that can control your body. So property is being able to have control over the use of said property. So when you go out and chop a tree down, well, you mixed your labor with something that was not previously owned as property. So then it becomes rightful property because it's not owned by someone else. And then when you have those logs, well, you can burn them as wood to generate heat to survive. Or the second form of property is a voluntary exchange. And this gets into one of the natural rights is your free will, which again stems from your first natural right, which is your self-ownership. And your free will is part of that self-ownership. It's part of your life. The life is another property you have. So you own yourself, and you own yourself because you exist. And with that existence comes life. So that's one of the properties. And if someone tries to take the property of your life, that is a false claim of ownership. And that is an instantiation of slavery, of enslavement. That's what all enslavement is. Enslavement is a broader category than what you people here might refer to it as. It's not just ball and chain overt slavery. There's covert slavery, and there's various degrees relative to the forms of property that you do have naturally and the violations thereof, or the false claims thereof. So if I go chop a tree and I get the wood, I've mixed my labor with a natural resource, and that becomes my rightful property. It's not wrongful property. But then if someone else comes and takes my wood that I already mixed with a natural resource, and they're going to say, well, I'm taking your wood, try to stop me, and they got a big axe. Well, I could try to stop them, probably die, and they'd be like, okay, well, you know, just like someone comes up with a gun and steals your wallet. So that'd be a wrongful claim of ownership. They have it in their possession because they took it from me, but it's not rightful property. So that creates an injustice. Are you following me so far? Is this making sense?
I'm
Or do you have
following, but
objections?
Yeah, this is pretty basic. I mean, we're not. I want you to answer Ryan's question about what he said about the trans movement. Is he? Are you harming them if you offend them?
So far. No, we have to
I
establish.
want you to go right to that. I already got the property thing. I understand.
You guys
understand the
don't understand it all. That's my point. That's why I'm
No,
explaining.
I understand just fine. I would. You want me here, pal? Let me show you something, dude.
If you understood it fine, you would already know the answer. Okay, so that's what we're trying to establish. I'm establishing the fundamental building blocks in order to understand these kind of abstractions.
no. The argument of if you understood it, you already agree with me. I'm sorry. You're going to have to do better
No,
than
you
that.
would already have the understanding, and you wouldn't have an objection to it. It wouldn't be this confused thing that you would propose it as an objection to how it doesn't make sense, or it's all just arbitrary and people get to make it up. This is what I'm trying to establish is, so you understand that you own yourself, and if you go out something.
Here's the main objection that comes at this crux. Not objection, the question that comes at this crux. If they now own, let's say it's a log cabin, and if someone builds a log cabin, because this is what we're going to go with, you said you're chopping down trees and stuff, building a log cabin, someone takes your log cabin, you can say there's an injustice, but they still own it. Like, it's still theirs, isn't it?
Who
like, and then there's the other issue of what if nobody else knows what's going to happen to this person?
Which person? The one who
took it.
So
they said, I'm going to take it.
Someone else takes it.
Yeah, they go, oh, I'm going to take it. I'm going to chop you with an axe or whatever, and they take it. They now live there. Someone built it. Person A builds it. Person B comes up and goes, hey, nice log cabin. I'm going to take that. So this is the main thing, because this is why we get down to the objective aspect of it. Is the claim is that now there's this injustice, but in this very real scenario, because this is a thing that used to happen in the pioneer days, people go out and build a cabin in the woods and be a homesteader. Basically, this claim of injustice doesn't mean anything because the person still owns the property. Nothing, as Nick put, it's like God isn't going to smite them for it. And this is where I have the problem of where it goes, well, this is claimed to be objective, but if it's objective, why is nothing happening to this person?
Nothing's going to happen to them.
Then how is it objectively immoral?
No, but that's what I'm getting at. So we already agreed that something that happens in reality is objective, right?
Yes, and nothing is happening, therefore this is not objective.
What do you mean nothing is happening?
Person B, chops down person A, now lives in their cabin. Maybe they touch it up and add more stuff. Okay. Nothing's going to come for them. Okay. No consequences would come to them. So if the claim is that there's a consequence for this, then objectively there isn't. Is that not the claim here?
At least none that you could prove.
Yeah, in that situation, it could be that nothing will ever happen to them. And they'll
then by the rules of science and scientific theory, one exception to the theory means the theory is wrong.
What exception?
Well, if your claim is that this is objective and thus should be observable in reality and all these sorts of things, well, we
haven't established how that works yet. It seems you're getting ahead of.
No, I really don't think I am at this point. You said like person.
Define. Explain to me what you're trying to get at. State your point, and we'll try to address.
The point is that in order for morality to be objective and thus baked into physics, you would expect consequences to come directly from physics. You expect it to be like gravity, which has no exceptions. You'd expect it to be like, the Doppler effect with sound. You'd expect it to be like the inverse square law for electromagnetic radiation, et cetera, et cetera. It just happens. This depends on other people's perceptions. It depends on them agreeing with you. It depends on them having the physical power or political influence to get other people to exert their power on people, et cetera, et cetera. This does not appear to be remotely objective in terms of the same idea of gravity or anything like that. It doesn't seem to be even close to that. It appears to be entirely based ultimately on people and their perceptions and their abilities. That's why I have the questions that it is as objective as claimed.
You're talking about consequences being applied for an injustice or a violation of property. Okay, that's what I'm saying. You're getting ahead of.
Well, I think it's who does the consequences. Who performs the consequences, man or nature? Is it natural law? There's natural, because I think what we're really talking about here is natural tendency. This is what we were talking about before. I think there's natural tendencies for people to behave a certain way. I don't think it's natural law. Like we can't. It's either God smites you, or this is something that's dealt with by man. And it is. It's dealt with by man. It's dealt with by man through society. That's why the word morality comes from the idea of society. And I'm with you guys. I'm not trying to pick you guys apart, and listen, I believe me, I understand, dude. This is my ticket from the natural law seminar for Mark Passio. This is the demystifying the occult, which is why I was the sound man for that. If you actually watch it, you'll see my name come up in the beginning. So I have a pretty good understanding of Mark Passio's information. I've listened to every one of his podcasts multiple times. I've met the guy a bunch of times. I'm very familiar with this. And Ryan has some very good points, and I'm kind of disappointed that you guys went after him, that he doesn't understand what he's talking about, because he has some valid points.
No,
so I think that what we really need to do is we have to talk about our what exactly we're talking about and define. We have to use definitions and define our terms a little better.
That's what I've been getting at, and that's why I'm also saying that I'm agreeing with the consequence part. And did you notice that I didn't disagree at any point? I agreed, and I've been shaking my head and I'm saying, yeah. The consequences come from humans, whether we apply them or not. In one aspect, whether there are going to be personal retributive consequences directed at the individual themselves only. Okay, so that comes from other people, whether they do something or not. So you guys are right. That's where it comes from. Is some people could have nothing happen to them in terms of person A chops whatever person B down, and person B has nothing happen to them in direct consequence and correlation to what happened to person B. Person A gets away with it. Absolutely, I agree. The part that, so since we're familiar with Mark Passio, the part that he's talking about in terms of consequence, which he's gone into more detail in his presentations and in his podcasts, that is lacking in his 9-hour original natural law seminar, is the aspect of how the consequences or the karma that's felt by person A is in terms of the aggregate. So you're mentioning society. So we can call that the aggregate of a people, the collection or collective of people in a certain area. We'll call that the society. So with reference to that society, that collection, that aggregation of people, they all live in an area. And this is what I was getting at originally with the property and rightful property and wrongful property. And rightful property is something that you've obtained without initiating harm against another sentient being. And that would be a consciousness in a body, something that has a body and its will controls its body. That's the first natural right.
Then I guess the next question for that is, let's say I have two properties. They're identical in every way. Let's say they're two wood calves. There's two people standing, property A and B. One of these properties was obtained rightfully, and one of them was obtained wrongfully. How would you tell the difference?
Well, how could you know? You're not God.
So there's no difference between a property that is rightfully and wrongfully obtained in objective reality?
Well,
there's
you'd
no
have to
measure, there's nothing you can look at for the property itself?
A behavior that occurs in reality is objective. We've already established that, right? So
Yes,
this
but
is
I'm
this
asking
is what
what
I've
is the
already.
difference between a rightful and wrongful
Yes,
property?
that's
There's
what.
two properties, one's rightful.
That's what I've been trying to define this whole time. I'm trying to get at the definition of harm, and now this is what I saw coming originally at the beginning, where I said this is gonna turn into like spaghetti, where we're gonna go everywhere. You're gonna have objections because you don't have the knowledge, which is what I'm trying to convey. But we have to start with the foundations
I'm
and
just
build
trying to
from
keep
there.
an objective reality here.
Yeah, but
what is the
to
objective
understand
that you
that,
would do?
yes. So to understand that, you have to get to an understanding of harm, right? So this new line of questioning, you're talking about the cabin. How do you know one was, how did you phrase it? One is a rightful property and the other one's wrongful property? Did I
Yes.
hear fair? Okay. So the rightful property would be one where there was no initiation of harm, and the wrongful property would be where there is an initiation of harm. So
Yes, my question was, on the outside, you see these two properties and the two people there with no other information from,
that's what I
you
said.
walk
You
up
can't
and
know, you're not God. How can you know? How can you know
so
anything
in other
about it?
words, they're saying that there is no objective difference between the property itself.
Look, I'm
the
gonna
properties themselves.
give you two apples and tell me from which tree they came from.
Exactly.
Okay, but the
That's my
apples
exact
are
point.
the
You're
apples
saying
are
one
in
is right, one
objective
wrong,
reality.
but
The apples objectively did come from a tree. It could be that they came from the same tree. It could be they came from different trees. It could be that they came from different trees in different countries. But how are you going to know that? It doesn't change the
that's
fact that the
exactly the
apples
point.
objectively exist and that they came from objectively from a tree, because that's the only way that apples come into existence is from an apple tree. It doesn't change the objective truth. A claim about it would be still right or wrong, incorrect or correct, true or false. Now, that's why I
This
said
is the
originally,
entire point
whether
of
you're
my
able to
question.
verify or demonstrate that a claim is true or false is another issue. That's what I originally started with long ago.
And
It's
if
part of epistemology.
verify in either of these cases in property A or B, does it matter? Is it relevant? If you are in it, like, are they not identical properties at that point for all
No, they're
intents and
not,
purposes?
because in
Well,
objective
how?
reality,
You don't know. It could be they're both
that's right.
legitimate. They could be both
You don't
illegitimate.
know. Exactly. So people could not know. That's true. But it doesn't matter whether you know or not in terms of what actually did happen. Something did actually happen. Now, whether you know that that happened or not, that matters in terms of whether you can say that you know it is true or know that it is false as an individual. But in terms of reality, it did happen in reality. So it objectively did happen. That's what I've been talking about the whole time originally, in terms of walking around in my room. If you can't verify, you can't know if I actually did. That's exactly. So what do you mean it doesn't matter? It does matter, because it did happen or it didn't happen.
Wait a second. Wait a second. What if you didn't walk around your room? Maybe you just meandered around it. Would there be a difference? I mean, this is where we're talking semantics here. I mean,
Yeah, but I don't.
There is objective reality that two people can see and we can agree on. But there's also things behind reality, like intent.
No,
or words that we describe those realities.
Stop going on a million different points and try to address things in a more simplified and specific way. So you have to define what's walk versus meander. If you want to establish there's a difference between walk and meander, then you would have to define what is walk, what is meander, and how do they differ, or how are they similar?
That's exactly the point of my question about the cabins. And you have admitted, as best as I can tell, that there is no difference. You can't observe a difference. It is much like the Serpicio sense, and I think it's Bertrand Russell's Evil Genius. Or as Lao Tzu, I think it's Lao Tzu.
The question is,
if the difference between a thing is existence and its non-existence, if you cannot observe a difference between things' existence and non-existence, we say those things do not exist.
No, your objection is in terms of an individual's ability to discern we could say for lack of a better word, the lawfulness of it. I'm putting it in quotes because I originally said forget about the term natural law, but in terms of the
Hang,
harmfulness of
hang on.
obtaining
How can we possibly throw out the term natural law if that's
because
what your whole thing is based on? That's
no,
what your
we're
talk
not
is on,
talking
isn't
about
it?
no,
Isn't
no.
you doing a 10-hour thing on natural law, correct?
No, we're not talking about natural law. We're talking about objective morality, which is a subset of natural law. That's why I said forget about natural law. It'll add confusion and it'll promote more questions and spiral more spaghetti pathways of tangents to try to answer things when we still haven't established foundations to build upon.
All right.
So
Well,
that's why I'm saying
let's
forget
move
about
on from
natural
the.
law. You're talking about two cabins. I'm trying to understand what your objection is and how you want to determine how one cabin. I didn't hear what was said there.
I just would love to hear you finish your thought, including defining harm. I can't wait for you to get to that.
Okay.
And I love the dialogue. Your guys' patience and being able to do this openly and freely like this is awesome. So keep up the good work, guys. But I'd love to be able to just to hear you complete your thought. Brian,
I'll let you do that.
I want to hear him complete his thought all the way.
Yeah, I'll let him. I'm going to move on from the observable rightness or wrongness because it appears to not be a thing. So
one thing I'd like to mention is so you have watched the 9-hour presentation on natural law. At the beginning, there was the aspect of teachability, and now teachability, Passio has also gone into more detail in the podcast, which is receptiveness and quieting the mind. So with risk of offending, it's to shut up in the mind and be receptive. So I'm not telling you to shut up. I'm just saying, in order to understand the original questions that you're asking, you have to let me try to build the foundation in order to construct these higher order concepts instead of immediately coming up with an objection that you have and then interjecting with that objection, such as the two cabins, which then detracts from the original purpose of me trying to explain the original question you had. And because if you keep doing that, then there's continual interjections and more objections because you're thinking of things that you're objecting to because you lack an understanding.
You got it, bro.
to provide
Go.
to you.
The floor is yours.
All right. So I haven't told you to actually shut up. I'm just trying to relate it to what Passio relates to as teachability or receptiveness in terms of me trying to answer your original question. If you keep creating tangents, it makes it more difficult for me to address the original issue. So you can write them on a piece of paper and then bring them up, as I mentioned before, in reference to Ryan versus Nick. If we keep different people bring up objections or questions, then it just keeps growing and growing rather than trying to address one pathway and trying to refine our understanding of that one thing, and then we can do the next thing and then the next thing as we build up.
Okay.
Yeah, like Hannah said, I hadn't finished trying to get to all the prerequisites to get to the understanding of objective morality. So we had established objective reality, synonymous with truth, correct and right. And from there, going to property and what you create and your behavior. And then the property you can acquire rightfully is from mixing your labor with a natural resource. Now, from there, I was trying to get to the point of when you obtain your rightful property, if someone comes and takes your rightful property, that is a theft because you have a rightful property, just like your life is your rightful property. It does not belong to someone else, because we have to understand property to understand the harm or non-harm aspect. So your self-ownership, you own yourself. If someone comes and takes your life, that is a theft. You could view it as a theft, which is how I explain it, and Passio explains it. Because they're taking something that does not belong to them. It's not a natural resource. This is a being which owns itself. It can will itself to do actions and behaviors just like I'm doing, just like everyone else here has been doing. Now, when you take the life or you take someone's rightful property that they've mixed their behavior, mixed their labor, their actions with a natural resource, or they voluntarily exchanged with someone who's done the same, and that's a rightful property exchange, and then you own that property. So if someone comes and just says they just come and take it or hit you on the head and then take it and run away, that is a wrongful property acquisition. They possess it, but it is not rightful property. So that action that they took is objective because all actions that occur in reality, whether someone can verify or demonstrate them, objectively occurred. The only issue is whether another person can verify or demonstrate the claim of what did happen in reality. Is it true that that happened in reality, or is it false that happened in reality? So for the sake of this argument, let's pretend there was a camera. The person didn't know. So anyone could look at the camera footage and verify and demonstrate what happened in reality, that this person's property was taken by person B. So then we know that person B, who possesses this property and has a claim of ownership on that property, what they actually have objectively is a false claim of ownership, because they did not acquire it through the two means via non-aggression of mixing their labor with a natural resource or through voluntary exchange. They came, we saw it on camera, they hit the person on the head, they took their logs, for example, to keep it simple, we'll continue with that. So they took their logs. So now we know objectively, because we can verify it. Now, whether we can verify it or not, it objectively did happen in reality. So these are two issues that are connected, but they're distinct and separate. Things happen in reality, and then other people can know, oh, well, this person says they had logs, and they say that the logs were stolen. Can you verify that they, first of all, had the logs in order to substantiate that the logs were stolen? Maybe they burned the logs and made like a false insurance claim, etc. So these are all separate issues of epistemology, how you can know whether you can know something is true or not. Now, we shouldn't get into that because that's a whole other issue in philosophy. Let's just stick with the example of there's a camera. We can know the person had the logs. There's another camera outside which shows them originally going to chop down the tree and obtain the logs. So we know they've obtained it rightfully. And then we have another camera which shows that someone else came, hit them on the head, and took their logs. So we have 2 points of evidence which can verify what actually did occur in objective reality. And again, whether those cameras are there or not does not matter in terms of the first point, that something occurred in objective reality. And we're not talking about the verifiability of a claim of something occurring, whether something is true, whether someone's claim of an occurrence in reality, an event taking place, an action being done, is right, correct, or true. We're not talking about that. We were talking about originally objective, something happened in objective reality. And this my explanation here sort of addresses the objection from Ryan earlier, whether it doesn't matter, something along those lines, that the 2 log cabins or something like that, that it doesn't
Except
matter. But
there's no
it
difference
does
between-
matter because something did happen in objective reality. And this is what I'm addressing here, is that whether you can verify it or not, something did happen. So I hope this is very easily understood, that something did happen. And I've also brought up another situation where you can verify it. Regardless of whether you can verify it and know that that is a true claim, that the person said that was their property and then it was stolen from them, and then we can see on camera that it was stolen by that person. Those are 2 separate issues. So one thing you have to recognize in terms of philosophy is that things happen in reality, whether you can verify them or not. And then there's the second issue of, well, can you verify it or not, in order for you as an individual to say that what this person said is a truth, is right, is correct, or it's false. Because people can make false claims. They can say things that are incorrect and wrong. Now, these characterizations of using the words true, correct, and right for what someone claims happened in reality is also applicable to behavior. This is what the core of the understanding of the word morality is about. Morality is about what is right, correct, and true behavior in terms of, did it initiate harm or not? And that's why I was defining property. So property, when you have rightfully acquired property, you did not initiate harm to another sentient being, so it makes it moral. And contrasted to that, if you did, also sorry, I rephrased Pascal's term to, okay, I'm not going to get into that because it'll be a whole other explanation. You'll just watch it in my presentation. Okay, I'm just going to stick to initiating harm to make it more simple rather than be more specific and more detail, which will just, okay, I'm stopping myself there. So if you do initiate harm, that's because you took something that was not your rightful property. You did not mix your labor with a natural resource. You did not voluntarily exchange with someone else. So I gave the example, well, there's the example of the logs. We have the video or not the video. It doesn't matter. It happened. It's just about whether you can verify it or not. And also in terms of your life. So if you start from your original natural right of you own you, no one else owns you, because you control, you will behaviors and actions to occur in the body that you control. That's your first natural right and natural
I get that.
property. Okay.
I think we've
So
covered
that's
that.
life. Life is one.
And I'll give you my
I-
core objection, so I don't have to do it again. My core question.
Yeah,
and
but
this is why I
wait.
brought up
I'm
the
still
law.
not done. I'm still not done explaining
Okay.
objective morality.
You know,
But
you
so
don't
note the-
seem
note
to
the-
be spinning your wheels. So
I'm not spinning my wheels. I'm just trying to remember my explanation. I'm recalling my presentation that is not out, that is complex in its understanding and its breadth. So the harm or no harm, that's what we're getting at. Originally you objected, you had objections over, well, how do you determine what is harmful or not? Whatever, the transgender or something, someone perceives it as harmful. Well,
Yeah.
this is what I'm answering.
well, that's one example, I guess. But yes.
No, this answers it all. I'm gonna continue though. So for the first natural one you have is your life from your body. And then you also have your free will. You know, here, I'm gonna give you guys, would you like an infographic to help elucidate this, to make it more visually meaningful in terms of my
No,
words that
I'm
I'm
just waiting for the explanation of how this stuff is objective
Okay.
in reality.
Yeah.
That is the core thing. That's why I brought up the example. of the
Objective
two
morality?
cabins.
as opposed to subjective morality, correct?
As in, what makes it observably different in the real world, thus demonstrating it is objective and outside of human just reasoning and action and stuff like that. Because if it isn't, then there really ain't, like I could just bring up,
Okay.
right now,
What
the US is all stolen land, technically. Does
Yeah,
that change
so-
anything?
look, you're talking about right now, you just said observable. So give me a minute, elucidate on that, expound upon that to, so I'm pretty sure I already know what you mean, but rather than assume, explain
Yeah,
to me
well-
the objection of why something would be objective, where versus here you're saying it's not objective. So give me an example of what you
Well,
term as actually objective.
the core claim of natural law and objective morality is that this is not based in human minds or anything
Okay,
like that.
Yeah, but forget about all of that right now. So you're saying that
No. This is the core thing. We already went over
but
objective.
I'm asking
Things that are
you a
observable.
question. I'm not asking you a question about that. I'm asking you a question about, give me an example of something that is, as you just mentioned, observable, because you're saying this isn't observable. So give me an example of something that is observable.
Well, the cabins would be observable. You could see them. They're right
Okay.
there.
So what? So
They
is a tree-
objectively exist.
a tree is there. A tree is there.
effects of this supposedly moral or immoral act, assuming either one of them did it, or maybe both, is not observable. There's nothing there in
Yes, there
reality
is.
to look at.
There could be.
What is
like
it from the
camera.
outside?
Well, I
What is
just
it?
told you the camera.
Yeah, but we're talking about the non-camera scenario, the original one I brought up.
Yeah. Okay. But
Likewise, we can take a camera type scenario, and I'll bring up the entirety of North America. So this is technically stolen land. Has that changed anything? Like
Changed
if
what?
you has it
So-
changed the fact that people still live there, the cities are established?
Yeah, but
This
that's
has been going on
irrelevant to the
for-
understanding of objective morality.
But the point is,
I
if
think the
there's been no
objections you have,
consequence, has there?
along with Nick, is that in terms of consequence, which we can eventually get to, but we still have to build our way up to there.
I really don't think you're going to build too much, but I will sit here for a bit longer and let you, because that is just the core thing. Like, I have no problem with your guys' concept. I have no problems with it. It's
Yeah.
just when you want to take it to that level and say this is objective and baked into reality, that requires physical, real world evidence.
Oh,
And,
there you go. There you go. You just said it again. So before you said observable, now you're saying physical, real world evidence.
That's
So give
what's
me
observable.
what is observable.
Why is it observable? Because
No,
it
no. What
goes
is? What are you
physical, real world evidence.
like what? Like a tree
Yes, like a tree.
versus
I brought up the example of the
versus
two
what isn't physical and observable. What is your
concept of objective morality. It doesn't seem to change anything.
Look, we still haven't even defined what objective morality is. So how can you?
Well,
this
you
is what
brought up this thing
building up
about
to.
rightful and wrongful
I haven't
property.
even
I
given
want to see, hey, is there a difference in reality between a
Haven't-
rightful or wrongful property? There doesn't appear to be, does there?
There is a
They seem to both be observably the same based on what you said. So what is the difference? Like, this is the core thing.
No. Does a tree exist in objective reality? Yes.
Yes. Does
We've
it
already
more
established-
tree exist?
We've already established at the beginning that actions and behaviors exist in objective reality.
Yeah,
already
they
established
exist,
that.
but if the
Okay,
effects thereof are not observable,
Let's build up an understanding. Let's build up an understanding again. This is what I've been trying to get at. And you keep coming up with, rather than going like this and building up, you're trying to go here when you haven't established these parts in the middle that you're missing.
Like the core is, if it's not affecting observable reality, independent of someone knowing about it and stuff, then it's just in human perception. It's all subjective. Like,
How is
that's
it
the core
subjective?
thing.
How is it subjective?
Because if a person, like you said, if they can't verify it, well, verification is ultimately subjective. Do they, like, the subject has to have that information?
Hey, how long is your finger?
Exactly. I could measure it and find out.
Oh, but that's
And I could get-
requiring your subjective mind to measure it.
Yeah, it is. But the measurement
So
itself
then-
is objective, because the
Then
measurement
you're
tool-
denying that. Well, no, then you'd be denying that there's an objective aspect to it, that it's an objective reality, because you're saying it's subjective, but it requires perception.
Yeah, it requires perception, but you're perceiving something that is objective. It doesn't depend on individual perception. It will be perceived the same
It does.
regardless of person.
That's right. It still requires individual perception.
And so,
In order for me to verify that your finger, let's assume it's 4 inches long. Okay, I don't care whether it's
okay, just define harm. Like, we're running in circles. So
No,
define-
that's the problem, because you do not have the definitions which I'm trying to provide, and you're trying to jump the gun and go all over
Well,
the place.
okay,
and then
we
you're
established
getting
right and wrong
impatient.
property.
Then you're
I'm getting impatient because this shouldn't be
yes.
this difficult, buddy.
It is
This really
difficult.
shouldn't be.
Yes, it is, because you do not understand it and you're objecting to it, and I'm trying to provide you with the definitions to try to understand it. So if you don't want to understand it, then okay, then
I'm asking you questions. I want to see where the objective component is. So we've discussed the
I'm
there's
bringing up
rightful and wrongful.
I'm bringing up
property,
counter
right?
arguments to your objections. Oh, you're
They
saying
haven't really
then-
countered it as far as I can tell.
Yes, you said that whatever your objection is to objective morality, which I haven't even gotten to establishing a proper definition of, so you're jumping the gun. You're saying it's all based on an individual's perception, which is why I'm bringing up the example of your finger, or the cup in front of you, or your monitor. How tall is it? What's the exact measurement? All this is based on an
Yeah, like,
individual's perception.
That's
Yes.
different.
Yeah,
I actually can measure those.
That's
I
right.
cannot measure the difference between the two cabins, whether one was rightfully or wrongfully obtained.
But
Unless
Okay,
there's that video
I'm-
camera, then yes, but
I'm-
if without it, there's nothing about them that changes. If when someone stole a cabin, the cabin grew, I don't know, 13 feet in diameter, and this was a thing you could
Well, who
see
cares about
anywhere
the
with any
cabin?
building.
it's not something that can happen.
No, it isn't, but that would definitely be a good way of showing, oh, this cabin was stolen, because every time one is stolen, it grows, 13 feet in, area or whatever. And you can go, oh, these are all these cabins are built
Well,
the same.
Since that doesn't work that way, let's forget about that completely, because that's not how reality operates in any realistic form. So let's
Hey,
just
Chris,
not
can I
make.
ask
Yeah,
can I ask Ryan a quick question, real quick? Ryan, just so I don't assume, like, what is your viewpoint on consciousness?
As best as I can tell, it seems to be a thing. That's actually one of my main areas of study, if you can call it that.
But
Consciousness certainly seems to exist. Everyone appears to experience it. There's a lot of commonalities with it. Exactly how it works, nobody knows.
how do you view it in like the physical world? You know, like how do you touch it?
How do you touch it? You're kind of always touching it, technically.
Well, no, like
It's how you view all experience. So it's sort of always getting touched in that regard.
no, like the reason why I'm asking this because you said to prove that something is objective, then you kind of like have to be able to touch it, you know, pretty much. That's why I'm asking you the same thing with consciousness because with consciousness you can't really touch it, you know. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's part of why there is a debate in neuroscience of whether or not it really exists, whether it's just an illusion. I mean, none of these are necessarily satisfactory to anyone, but generally speaking, the ways they try to do it or try to approach it is through fMRI scans and whatnot, and showing that, hey, if you show someone an apple, their brain lights up in a certain way, and then that seems to correspond to how they report observing it. And those types of things are now being used to make sort of AI programs, or if you think something, you can write out a sentence because the generally common ways that words show up in people's brain scans is common enough that you can write programs for that. So that type of thing is sort of how they're doing that. But
yeah,
that still leaves a lot of other questions.
I'm familiar with that. I was just curious. I was just curious.
It's a good question. That's the reason it's called the hard problem of consciousness. But yeah,
Well, I don't think it's that hard. I just think it comes down to, help people's programming and, having a very imbalanced, mindset. Because a lot of people who tend to be left brain and, like into like the whole scientific, community seems to go down that path that, consciousness isn't real because like it can't be shown in a lab. And I'm not saying they all are like that, but a lot of them are. Like if you can't physically touch it or if it can't be dissected in a lab, then it's not real.
yeah, that's also the delusion of denying there's free will.
Right. Yeah.
So this ties directly into what we were talking about. The you mentioned brain scans. Well, brain scans are perceived by someone. There's a procedure where uh, electromagnetism is used in order to penetrate layers and detect electrical signals in the brain, and then that's recorded, and someone perceives it in order to measure it and make an assessment and draw conclusions about it. That still requires perception. The machine scanning it doesn't mean anything to anybody. There is no meaning in itself without someone trying to make sense of it, someone who programs and discovers this ability to use electromagnetic frequencies in order to devise detection mechanisms and then to correlate those detection mechanisms as a mesh of interactivity in neurons in the brain, and then program that data in a cohesive manner to give output for a human to perceive it and then make sense of it. So that's what I've been trying to explain with the finger or the cup or the monitor. All these are measurements that are being done and they're being perceived by a consciousness. Now, the same applies to harm. Because if you see this brain scan and I don't, and there's no recording of the brain scan, then you can make a claim that the brain scan showed dormant activity in the prefrontal lobe, which is indicative of XYZ conclusion. But if I didn't see the brain scan, then I can only believe your claim. I can't know that your claim is actually true, right, or correct, because you're just making a claim about something that happened in reality. This is the same thing with the 2 log cabins. If there's no way for someone to verify, or the logs with someone hitting them on the head, if there's no way for someone to verify something, then a claim can be true in objective reality. That the way they explain what happened in objective reality is right, correct, and true, but someone else is not able to verify that that demonstrably did happen. So whether it's a brain scan or measuring your finger, say your finger got chopped off and you say, my finger used to measure this much, but your finger doesn't exist anymore. So there's no way for me to know whether your finger actually did measure that much. And you would be stating the truth that you did measure it, but I can't know in truth whether your claim is true. I could just believe it. Now, this is epistemology. I couldn't say what you said is true because I wouldn't have the truth. The truth only comes, truth is veracity. It's veritas, comes from the Latin. That has to do with veracity and verifiability. So if I cannot verify that your finger was that long, then I cannot say that I have the truth that your finger was that long, even though that you would know that it is that long, because at the time that it did exist, you did measure it. So it would be something that existed at one point in time that ceased to exist at another point in time. And this is how all actions and behaviors occur. They are ephemeral. They exist in temporary occurrences in time, and they can have observable effects and measurable effects that persist in time. And this is also how the scientific method operates, where persistence, repeatability, where you devise a hypothesis and a procedure, and you observe and then you draw conclusions from it. Someone can repeat the same thing and verify if your theory and your conclusion is supported by the evidence, because they could conduct the same experiments with the procedures and see if they get the same results. So in some cases, that's not possible, such as behaviors and actions, because they are ephemeral and you can't always reproduce an individual's actions because they are unique in at particular time. So that's why, for example, the camera is a good way to be able to verify it. And if it's not there, then you can't verify it. And these are distinct issues apart from whether something did happen or didn't happen. So I just wanted to address these new objections that you made. Now I'm going to go back again and trying to get to what objective morality is. So I'm just trying to nullify your objection that things have to be perceivable by an individual, but if they are perceivable by an individual, then they're only subjective and they're not objective. But that's how everything works, because the measuring of your finger, the action that did occur in objective reality, it's ephemeral. It only occurred at that instance, and after that instance, it's gone. Me waving my hand, you can all see that it objectively happened, and after it happened, it's not there anymore. My hand does not consistently wave if I do not will it to. So it's no longer in the instance of a hand waving by me is no longer in objective reality. It's no longer an occurrence in objective reality. So it is a truth at a past moment in objective reality, and it did occur. And you were all present to verify the objectivity of its occurrence. And you can say epistemologically that you know it is true, correct, and right. That if I
I
make a
think we've
claim
covered
or if someone else
verification
makes
now.
a claim that it happened, that it did happen. So this goes back to your objections about the log cabin. Well, if no one can verify it, then yeah, that's right. That's why I agreed from the beginning. No one can verify that it belonged to that person. And as far as anyone else is concerned, the 2 log cabins belong to them. So that's this line of questioning you were getting at is in order to answer the aspect of consequence. So like I said, we're going to table that for now, but I just wanted to bring more clarity to how all this works in terms of objective reality and this subjective perceiver, that just because you're perceiving something or not perceiving something does not negate something having happened in objective reality. So we'll return back to trying to define objective morality. My last point I was at, I believe, was on building up from behavior, objective reality, right, correct, and true, and property, and then we got to harm and rightful property and wrongful property. So the example I was using was your first natural right, your first natural property, which is your life, and then subsequently you have free will. So you have your body, life, you could use them interchangeably, but part of your body is your consciousness and your free will. So within your body, you have your life, you could say, and then from that, you don't have a free will without having a life to exist in the first place, a body to exist, to exemplify and orchestrate your will through the machinations of your body. And from there, you have, so that's two, we have established life, we have established free will as properties. From there, we can establish your sexual association. And everything all stems from free will, from choice. So you can choose what to do with your life. You can self-terminate, you can suicide, and that is your right, because you are the only one that owns you.
Can't
But
be a
free
slave
will,
though.
no, because that'd be giving over your natural inherent property ownership that only you control your body. You can't give that to someone else. So you can say you're going to go work for someone else or something. That's what we all do. But you can't give over, you can't actually, in reality, give over your right to your life to someone else. It can't be done. Your body is always yours. You can't give it to someone else. It's always your property right. It can't be given to someone else. You can pretend you can, but it can't actually, in natural reality, in objective reality, it can't be done. These are claims, these are perceptions that someone could agree with your claim that I'm going to give over my my property right of my life and my body to someone else, and they could perceive that as a valid claim, but it's never a valid claim. So we have established life, free will. The next one I was going to was all the others are based on choice. So your sexual association and the violation thereof, which would be rape. There is your bodily integrity, which a violation thereof, the theft of, is an assault. There is standard property, such as the logs or whatever you mix your natural labor with, mix your labor with natural resource to obtain as rightful property. These are things external to you. You go buy something, etc. And the theft of that is just a standard theft, what people normally call theft. And the next one would be, well, I mentioned free will. So the theft of that is coercion, to take away your right to choose what to do with your body or your other property, your rightful property ownerships. And the first one was life. So the theft of life is murder. So we've dealt with 5. The next one is trespass. These are just the 7 main ones that Mark Passio has demonstrated as like core upper level ones that you can, when you talk about taxation, that's like you can channel it back to these 7 original transgressions. So I'm just explaining these here so we can get to an understanding of objective morality. Trespass, so that's the security of your living domain, and the theft of that is trespass. And that's recognized in common law for hundreds or thousands of years as like if you look at the sovereign movement and freedom on the land, everything is regarded as a trespass, and that's how you bring it as a court, as a case in the magistrate court of common law, as an individual against another individual. So it wouldn't be against the prime minister. You'd go after the individual Justin Trudeau for a violation against you as a trespass. Anyways, that's something else, but whatever, that's in the bullshit of the law system. And the final one would be a willful deception, is the theft of your ability to make informed decisions. So we're all aware of the genetic injections, whatever you want to call them, for the COVID bullshit. And in order to take it rightfully, then you'd have to be informed of all the potential risks and dangers, which people were not. So people were deceived, they were lied to, and that makes it a violation of their rights to be informed of the decisions they're going to take this thing. Because if you're not informing people, then the decisions they make are based on falsity. They have a false representation, a false perception, something that is wrong, incorrect, or false about reality. It is not what reality is. It is a false reality, an unreality. It is not objective reality. It is a misalignment. It is a perception that creates an inner reality, a subjective inner reality that is misaligned. So rather than be aligned, it's misaligned with how objective reality is. So you're not actually in reality, you're in a false construct of reality. And this is the map versus the terrain or the territory. And we try to do our best to align our inner reality with the actual objective reality, the light of how we perceive things as they are with how they actually are. So that's a continual quest that we're on. All of us here, I'm sure we're on it. Through our lives, we're trying to gain more truth. So now we've established these main 7 property rights, and these are natural rights that you have that all derive from the first natural right of self-ownership, that you own yourself and no one else owns you. And any violation of these 7 main property rights is the initiation of harm, which is what makes it immoral. And if you are, this is what Brandon started off with, the apophatic pathway to understanding morality is what you don't have a right to do. So what you don't have a right to do is the thefts of these 7 inherent property rights that you have, because they initiate harm.
And what is the definition of harm?
So harm, I'd have to check my slide, but going off the top of my head, see if I got this right. Harm would be the theft of a property right that someone has. I believe that is 100% correct. But I have to check my slide if that's the way I defined it, but that's the way I'm defining it now. And that is the way that harm should be understood based on this chain of events of understanding things in objective reality, that you have these 7 natural property rights that stem from the objective existence of you existing. So these 7 property rights objectively exist, and behaviors that also objectively exist that are initiated in reality that violate those 7 property right ownerships, well, those are objectively initiating harm. They're objectively doing a wrong to someone because they're doing the theft. That's what makes it wrong, and that's what makes it harm and the initiation of that harm. So
So
this
with
is,
that being said, to my
yeah,
very, very original question as an example, for the people who believe that if you offend them because you don't use their proper pronouns, that you are therefore committing violence against them, are they correct?
no,
Because they own themselves, correct, right?
yes, but that's just an identification. It's like if I call myself a pumpkin and you don't call me a pumpkin, who fucking gives a shit? I'm not a pumpkin.
You're causing them emotional pain that they're feeling in their body.
That's
Which of
not
the
suffering.
seven,
that's not a property right.
which of the 7 transgressions was committed that he just
Exactly.
said? Like between murder, rape, assault, coercion, theft, trespass, or deceit. Which of those was actually committed? None.
According to
Not
them, sometimes it's rape.
No, but that's their false perception.
right.
It's not an objective understanding of where their perception is aligning with reality in order to actually have a truth of understanding something in objective reality. They've constructed a subjective, false representation of reality. So if you are a biological man and you identify as a woman, okay. And then if someone calls you a man, even though you want to identify with a woman, and you're insulted by that, okay, you're insulted by it, but it's not violating any of your property rights. So there's no theft, and there's therefore no initiation of harm. So it's not a wrong, it's therefore not immoral. Does it make sense?
I suppose they would have to in that regard. I don't think they would agree at all.
Oh, I know,
Right,
because
they
they don't have this understanding. That's why.
correct.
Look
Yeah.
at how long it took me to
I-
get this understanding to build it up. Go ahead,
What,
Brent.
Which still gets back to the core other problem of there doesn't seem to be an objective difference in objective reality between any of these things being committed. Again, I could bring up the example of all of North America. No objective consequence occurs. You can make all the arguments about morality and whether it was moral or immoral to conquer the Americas in general, because technically the South was the same, but it doesn't really matter. Nothing's going to come back to it. Furthermore, you could even conversely make the argument that what Israel is doing to Palestine currently is totally allowed, because hey, way back in the day, 400 years ago or whatever, the Muslims came into that area and subjugated those people in their own way. And as David Ben-Gurion was quoted saying, if I remember correctly, well, the old Jews never left, if I remember correctly, was the at least my paraphrasing of his quote. And therefore, it's totally okay what they're doing. After all, they were attacked, weren't they?
Can you
So,
can you
wouldn't that be
demonstrate
a
that?
consequence?
Can you demonstrate that that actually happened? Can you verify it? Now,
Of
we're
course,
not
I
talking
cannot,
about
but
whether it
we
happened
can
or
we
not.
can
Maybe
certainly
it did happen.
certainly say it.
You ever
Well,
heard
then this
the
would be another one
maybe
for
it
North
didn't.
America, right?
You ever
We
heard the
could
saying?
say, good, sorry.
No, no, I was gonna say, you ever heard the saying, "Is the sins of the father should be rested upon the son?" Sometimes effects in reality aren't instant, and hell, there is a time gap. Because as those wrongdoings are being committed, because sometimes we may experience these negative consequences not just on a individual level, but as a collective. We may not just experience on the physical level, but we may experience them on the spiritual level. Because when we are talking,
Do you have evidence that the spiritual level
hell,
exists?
hell, naturally, see, I knew you was gonna say that. I already knew you were gonna say that.
Look, I'm going to tell you this as someone who has studied a lot of parapsychology and had a lot of paranormal experiences. So I'm just going to ask you that question, though.
Okay. So, as I was saying, is natural law isn't just a physical law, but it's also a spiritual law. So these effects in the form of consequences may not always be experienced on the physical level. But if someone doesn't know that the spirit exists, then of course they'll always throw out that aspect.
Well, again, should be demonstratable if it is true. And this is my core thing. There doesn't appear to be any objective, measurable anything to show that these consequences really happen. And to say, oh, it'll take some time. Well, how much time? How do we know? Is there an equation to figure this out? Because, like,
Hell, again, what you're just saying is because it can't be taken in a science, laboratory and dissected, then it doesn't prove to exist.
well, yeah, that to be perfectly honest,
And that's a
what you
left
guys are
brain.
basically saying, this thing is not observable. It isn't objective. There is nothing that you can point and say, see, look, this is how I know, this is how it works.
Eh.
You're basically pointing at a bunch of subjective stuff. And then when I ask, okay, well, you say it's objective, so where's the objective part? There isn't any. There's no difference between, the two log cabins. There's no difference between, the various conquests that happened over the eons. Like, there is no consequence unless you have all these other things in place of the verification and all this other stuff, which means that it is not an objective thing baked into reality, baked into physics. It clearly isn't. It is baked into people.
Like Chris said earlier, teachability scale. If you try to just come at this from just scientific or a left, extremely her left brain, just as though you try to come at it from extremely her right brain, you're not going to get it. And unfortunately, that's what seems to be the case on what I'm, sensing is you're coming at it because you said it, multiple times is if you can't dissect it in a science laboratory, then it's not like it's not real. That's the same thing that B.F. Skinner said. And, you know, hey, some people aren't going to learn this stuff, and hell, that's on them. But trying to, he'll keep trying to show you something that you are, hell refusing because of some form of brain imbalance, hell, that's on you.
So Ryan, I'll say that I agree with your objections here, and as Brandon said, I don't view it from the same position he does or Pasio does because I can't verify that aspect. It may be that there are these consequences in other realms or other dimensions or whatever. I can't verify that, so I don't talk about that. I explain it objectively in terms of how I can build upon it from objective reality and explain how it operates. Now, in terms of consequence, we can get into that, and I can explain an aspect of it, how there are consequences beyond what, as I mentioned an hour ago or something, 2 hours ago,
45
hour
minutes.
and a half, about how the consequences might not be directly applied to the individual themselves, the individual perpetrator, the individual violator. You won't have a one a one-to-one correlation of person A did this theft, this violation, this violence, and then you're expecting like a teeter-totter, a seesaw, a karmic pushback immediately or in the future where they directly have a negative consequence applied to them. So sometimes, like if that does apply, in my view, which there could be other information that I don't have and haven't acquired yet, but in my current understanding, that yes, like Ryan said, and I think Nick said as well, and that is applied by other people, applying consequences to those violators for their violations. And in my view, if you, now that's in terms of a one-to-one of you did X and now you're being punished for X, that comes in the form of an individual who's, or a group, it doesn't need to be an individual. They can have other people and have proof or convince them that they need to apply, go get justice and apply consequences to an individual or a group who did violence. And this is where it gets murky across history because we're dealing with a lot of perception and a lot of claims that can't be verified. And then you end up believing people and people get rallied behind convincing arguments into false things or into true things, and then they apply justice. So it's very murky, but we shouldn't get we're not going to go down to that path because that's not the objection you're making. We both agree, as far as I can tell, that that is one way that it does happen. Now the objection that you're having is, how do consequences apply outside of that? Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be that's how you'd say it could be objective, because you can see an objective effect of it, kind of like a field effect for electromagnetism or similar. You may not be able to see the thing itself, but you can study the effects of it and show that, hey, these effects are
Okay.
consistent.
So in that sense, so we can call this karma, right? So you got a karmic debt, you got to pay the debt, and people are going to go collect the debt, maybe. And
Oh, if it
you could,
maybe that
yeah.
destroys your whole argument.
No, it's
And if it's karma, people shouldn't be collecting it.
okay. This is in my next presentation that is not done. This is after the one on morality called The Law of Freedom, where I get into this with some infographics, and I explain this even more. So we've already established that there can be a direct correlation between an individual or a group performing a violation and then a repercussion that they face applied by an individual, another individual or a group for said violations, that they are going to pay back a karmic debt. So this is one type of karmic debt. So that's a maybe. Maybe they'll get away with it. Maybe nothing will happen to them. Maybe something will happen to them because people are going to bring back the debt and they're going to collect on it. And they're going to apply consequences in that violator's life. So that could happen, but that could not happen. Now, this is one pathway. Now, the way that you're having confusion understanding and that Passio doesn't address immediately when he tries to explain this, such as possibly in the Natural Law 9-hour seminar or in other parts, but he does get into it if you go through all of his podcasts and his presentations, you'll get an understanding of this piece by piece, which is why I'm doing the Natural Law, Science of Morality on rights, slavery, freedom. Next is morality, then it's the law of freedom, and then I'm going to be doing natural law as a term. Is that it's over, 400 or 500 hours, which takes a lot of time to go through in order to get this understanding. So I've gone through that. I've gotten the understanding and I've expounded upon it, and I've tried to correlate it and verify it in reality. And this is the understanding I've come to which can differ from Mark Passio's, it can differ from Brandon's. And if there's other information out there that can demonstrate why a claim is true about another way it happens, then I'd be open to it, but I haven't come across. I don't know everything. I'll learn things as I go. I get older, but for now, I don't understand it in terms of, we could say it another dimension or another realm or whatever, some other aspect beyond our existence now that we exist in and we live in and we can verify from. Apart from that, now let's get back to this other aspect of consequences that can be applied, that does apply to how Mark Passio will use it, how there are going to be consequences applied in terms of, now I will use the term natural law as an overall encompassing, because that's where the law of freedom comes in, which I assume you are both familiar with, the law of freedom. Either
No, not by however you guys have said it, but I get the general idea. Yeah,
So-
I'm mainly just waiting for what is the objective evidence of these consequences that apparently occur, even if no one can verify and all that sort of stuff.
I'm getting.
That's all I really care about here. Give me
Okay.
the evidence, and I'm good.
All right. So the law of freedom is the aggregate level of freedom is going to be based on the aggregate level of moral behavior. You have heard this before? Do you have objections to this understanding? 'Cause that
I'm
would be
really
another thing.
at this point. I'm waiting just for you to get to the point, demonstrate the evidence, stop with this freaking meandering bullshit. Like, I'm sorry, but come on. Like, this shouldn't be this difficult. It shouldn't take 500 fucking hours or whatever you said to go
Well,
through this.
well,
Demonstrate
how come you
evidence.
didn't
This
understand everything that I
natural
talked
law.
about from the beginning?
And first off, so this was called the study of objective morality. So if you aren't willing to learn and put in the time to learn, then why are you here?
Well, I've been trying to ask questions. You keep meandering around with this stuff. It's really
not
simple. Point to
meandering.
it. Point to the evidence.
I'm going to try to explain it, but that's why I'm introducing the concept of the law.
Yes or no question. Is there or is there not observable evidence that you can point to that these consequences do indeed exist, independent of people's ability to verify whether right or wrong action was taken? Yes or no?
Does slavery exist?
Yes or no?
Does slavery exist?
Okay, that's a no. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Bye.
Yeah.
You're pretty ignorant.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
this is what the whole crux is on, is slavery. Does slavery exist?
Yeah.
No? Okay, well then you're denying the thing that would point you to what you want to know. So does slavery exist? Yes. Okay. Well, that's what the law of freedom is about. Aggregate freedom is based on the aggregate moral behavior. So if you do not have aggregate moral behavior to create true freedom, then what you have is aggregate behavior that is not truly moral. And what you're going to have are degrees of slavery, degrees of enslavement, where you have degrees of the theft of individuals' property rights in varying degrees, whether that's the tolerance of taxation, for example, which is the theft of the fruits of your labor, to choose what you will do with the fruits of your labor. That is a theft. And when that perpetuates beyond a temporal occurrence at one particular time and it is repeated persistently, then what you have is a state or condition of enslavement. Now, this is a demonstration.
Wait, didn't you tell Nick that he couldn't give himself over to slavery because you can't actually give up that right? So how does slavery exist if he can't give himself away to it?
No, I had defined earlier that slavery is a false claim of ownership. Would you deny that there were African Americans or other people of other races throughout history that were enslaved in different countries, such as Roman times where they would enslave people of various ethnicities? Did that occur?
So are you saying that slavery
No,
is
did
your
that occur?
evidence? Wait.
That occurred.
Are you saying that yes, it occurred?
Stop
Are you
jumping the
saying
gun.
that
I
slavery
could
is your
insult
evidence?
you and say you're talking bullshit, just like you wanted to try to me, but How
Hey,
about
I
you just
asked you
answer the
specifically,
question?
point to the observable objective evidence of these consequences. And are you saying
Did
slavery is that
slavery
evidence?
occur? Yeah,
How is that a consequence? I'm sorry, but no, that does not make any sense.
exactly.
You're gonna have to.
Exactly. You do not understand, which is what this whole elaboration that I've been doing, trying to define things, to build up definitions,
Are you
is to
saying that
bring you to that understanding. So rather
are
than
you saying that
rather
the
than be
system that is in
belligerent,
America right now
rather than be
is
belligerent,
the result
why
of
don't
them
you
invading
reframe
the
your
Americas?
state of mind to be more welcoming of me attempting to give my time to explain these things to you, rather than be belligerent and turn into obnoxious or name calling and
Look, I'm sorry, but this stuff should be real simple. So you're
Oh,
saying
it's really
that
simple.
slavery,
So
if it's
do you
really simple, why
understand
are you taking so
initiating
long?
harm now? And do you recognize that 2 hours ago you did not understand what it meant, and that it took 2
No, I
hours for me
think
to
I
explain?
got it initially.
If you had it
So
initially,
okay,
you
so
would have
slavery
provided the
is the
definition.
claim.
You would have provided the definition initially if you actually understood it, rather than me have to laboriously go
Hey,
through
sir,
this process to define it, that you now can define it the way I have defined it. If you would have already had that definition,
I
you
can
would have
certainly
provided
use
it.
your definition, yes.
Well, is it an accurate definition or is it not? I've built
I
up a
certainly
chain,
had a
a chain
definition
of
I could
causal,
include.
objective demonstrability from your own body ownership towards property and the initiation of harm. And now that's wrong and that's immoral.
Okay, so back to the question of slavery, right? So is the
Yes.
claim
Slavery
that
exists? Yes.
yeah, okay, slavery apparently exists even though it also doesn't exist because you can't give your butt like whatever.
No,
Okay,
no,
so
you're
that's the thing.
misunderstanding. The
So you're
you
saying degrees of slavery, right?
no,
Degrees of
first of
slavery
all,
are the
let's
consequence, correct?
address your misunderstanding of this paradox you've created now. Contradictions and paradoxes don't exist in objective reality. They are a result of erroneous thinking. So right now you're engaged in erroneous thinking where you think two contradictory statements can be true at the same time, which they can't. Now this demonstrates that you have a lack of understanding, which I can attempt to clarify. Someone making a claim of ownership upon you doesn't make it true. It just makes it a claim. So which is what I was originally talking about before, where someone's claim about something in reality, in existence, that is objective, can be true, correct, right, or false, incorrect, and wrong. So someone can make the claim, as has been done hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. Slavery, overt slavery, like taking someone, chaining them, making them work. That's an extreme form of slavery, but there are lesser forms, which is what I was talking about before. Now, these extreme forms, these were all false claims of ownership. Now, whether some slaves like Frederick Douglass has talked about in his autobiography, the slave, the black slave, who talked about how other slaves actually thought in their false perception, this unreality they created, that they were actually the property of their masters. Now, this is a claim that was made against them, that this is how reality is, and they accepted that false claim, so that they were living in a false reality. They were not living in objective reality. So this should clarify this contradiction, the paradox that doesn't exist, that you formulated. So that should nullify that there's a false claim made and people can accept the false claim. It doesn't mean that it's true, right, or correct. It's not in objective reality. That's not the way it is.
Okay, so this is the evidence, or this is part
No,
of the
there was
evidence.
just me clarifying this objection you have where you were
I know,
getting
I know, but slavery is going to be part of the evidence, presumably, of this is how these consequences happen, even with no verification, etc.
So slavery can exist in degrees, which is why I brought up taxation, because it is a false claim of ownership on the right to take from other people that which is not yours. That is a wrongful claim of property, such as I've explained earlier, which is there's rightful property ownership and wrongful property ownership. So when you engage in theft of someone's wallet, you possess something that it has not been rightfully obtained. So that's wrongful property ownership. It's in your possession, but it's not rightful property. Now, the same with taxation is someone did not voluntarily exchange or agree to something. It was taken by coercion, by threat of violence, that if you don't agree to allow this to happen, we will extort you more, or we'll put you in a cage. And if you resist even more through your natural rights to self-defense, then we'll execute you. And society accepts this. Now, when this is all accepted by an aggregation of people, a collection of people, a collective, a society, this is a state of enslavement. It's not the overt enslavement of ball and chain, etc., working in the fields, whatever conception that 99.99% of people have of what slavery is. They would not conceive of slavery as being defined through taxation, because they do not have this, the objective definition of the difference between what is a right behavior and wrong behavior, which is what I have provided. So these degrees of enslavement create a state of enslavement. Now, these states of enslavement are the results, these are the consequences of the behaviors that other people have taken and that other people have accepted. So you see, that's an objective result. That state, that condition of existence is objective. It was created through behaviors. It's created through, in the case of taxation, it's persistent behaviors that continue to persist through time. It was not just a mugger stealing something at one instance. It's a body called government, the state, making a false claim of having the right to control others, the right to invent rights, the right to negate rights, which are inherent and they don't come from people. Now, this will answer objective morality. That is what objective morality comes. It doesn't come from anyone. Oh, man. It doesn't come from anyone saying that it is this way or it is not. These are things that are discoverable. Now, I didn't discover them. I don't know where Pastor got it, but I got it from Pastor mostly, and then I verified it, which is what I'm explaining here in great detail through my verification process that I have done to understand it as something that is an objective reality. I don't know what I was talking about 30 seconds ago, but if you have anything else to say, go ahead.
I suppose the last thing I would have to say is I don't really see how that really counts as the same type of objective consequence, at least in terms of physical reality. However,
It's not
it
the
doesn't
same.
work as a good.
It's not
It
the
does
same.
work
You're right.
okay-ish as a societal thing. The only real issue is with that is that a lot of people don't see that as slavery at all.
That's what I said. 99.99% of people have a very limited definition of slavery. And why is that? Because they do not have an actual definition of objective morality, which is to know definitively, objectively, the difference between a right and wrong behavior, because they view taxation as a rightful behavior. So
Just
they've created a reality of this behavior is rightful. Everything is right. This is okay. The state has this authority. The belief in authority is legitimate when it is not. So they create a false perception, a false reality, and they live in this false reality that does not match what objectively can be defined in reality. And then they allow it, and that allows the persistence. Because if they didn't allow it, if we all rose up and said, fuck you, and we burn down all their buildings and execute them all, well, would that still be happening? Well, maybe if someone else tries to do it, as long as we allow whatever they want to do to happen, then it will continue to happen. And that will be the state and condition that we exist in. And that can be defined as a degree of enslavement. So of course, that's the problem, is that people do not have definitions, which is what I've been providing in this meeting. And we have to, that's what the great work is, to provide this understanding to everyone on the planet, which is very difficult. It's very time consuming and laborious.
I'm going to be honest, you could have really shortened all of this. I still think many issues persist in terms of a lot of the verifiability of certain things, which is why a lot of these systems got created. I don't agree with these systems. However, I do understand the basis by which they were created and why would you have a court system with what is supposed to be a neutral arbiter? Well, you can't know if one person did or did not do a certain thing because you can't know objectively just by looking at it, which then brings in many muddied waters, which then typically seems to result in the system we have as an attempt to deal with the very problems they're talking about. Or at least, which is why I kept bringing up is this objective or not? Is this something where you can just see it in reality or not? And I'm going to be honest,
but it's
I don't
based
really,
on
I'm going to be honest, I don't
definitions.
really see that. I really don't see that. I see that these systems, though absolutely been coerced and everything, the original concept of them was to cover the verifiability problem and cover all those gray zones that come up with this. Because it isn't an objective thing. People can have that sort of, not herd mentality, that's the wrong term, but the sort of the social aspect of it in terms of what, a lot of this exists presumably anyway, certainly the evidence points to it in terms of evolution of a group, humans working groups. And so you see internal emotional stuff to keep people within the group. And so a lot of these behaviors are exactly a result of not behaviors. The perception of the morality of it is a result of that, for these group things. But because of the verification problem, because it isn't enacted in any way objectively, you then have all these things that come about. And so so then you have the question of, okay, is it really slavery, or is this just the most stable way we can do this to make it work the best we can, because it won't be perfect because it isn't objective.
By keeping people ignorant, they
slavery.
sell this as the most legitimate way.
Yeah, it's clearly slavery because the authority systems make a claim of ownership on your body, just as though the physical slaves. It was a claim of ownership, a claim upon how to labor, the claim upon how the energy. It's the same thing.
I can see way too many gray zones for that to really be the case.
Well,
And
I
of
would just
course, go ahead, sorry.
I would just add that, currently the US military, when you sign up for the military, you become a slave. You become US property. And if you do something to damage yourself, it used to be like even if you got a tattoo, like you got a tattoo on your face, they would prosecute you under Article 108 of the USMCJ, or I can't remember what the hell it was, but it was essentially damage to government property. That's the system that we got right now. That's the US government right now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to go into as talking about slaves is that, well, the whole military thing. Sure, I mean, you're becoming a slave to somebody who's going to order you to do harm to people. But what if you just submit yourself to slavery? You're then not a slave if you just decide that, hey, I'm going to shovel all your shit. I'm going to take care of everything you do. You're going to tell me when to sleep, when to piss, and when to shit, and you're going to feed me. And but I'm not going to hurt anybody. Does that still make you a slave if you subject yourself to that by your definition?
So you always have your free will choice. You're always going to be responsible for your ability to think. So you're always going to be in full ownership upon your body. So that's why how we were saying you can't give that personal responsibility toward someone else. Like you can't. It's physically impossible because you are always going to be in control or somewhat in control of your inner kingdom. So you are always going to be in full ownership. So if you make that false claim, which that's all slavery is a false claim, then that also is going to have an effect upon objective reality. And then too, it's no different than when the physical slaves back in the day had inaccurate understanding of what the truth was, of what the objective reality was. So to build your worldview or your belief structure off of incorrect understanding of objective reality and wrong wrong information is going to lead to wrong forms of behavior. That's why we are saying is even if you make this false claim to give your own physical being in the form of a slavery to another form of authority, you don't have that option because you will always be in control of yourself. You will always have the ability to make free will choices. You will always have the ability to use your brain, your mind to think. It's a false claim. And because slavery is always held immoral, it doesn't even matter who's doing it. It it's a it's a construct that we have created for a means of control. And then two, that has an effect on everybody else because what you are trying to say is, hey, slavery is somehow illegitimate, which that has an effect on other people. Because if enough people start buying that, how that mindset and how that garbage, then we end up having the same problems that we have today, which is no different because people have been given a wrong form of objective reality, and they're saying you must pay taxes, you must, how you must do this because they have an incorrect understanding of what a true right is, and therefore they can't understand what a wrong is, and therefore they have bought into this incorrect worldview that affects other people. So if enough people buy into this incorrect worldview, then that's going to create an incorrect version in the form of behavior. And that's how we get slavery, because you can't get to physical slavery without having the mental slavery first. It happens within the mind. And if you actually apply the hermetic principles to all of this, then you would see, because the first principle is the principle of mentalism, and then the second would be the principle of correspondence. That's why Chris brought up the law, hell, the freedom as morality, increases, freedom increases in the aggregate, just as though as immorality, increases, then slavery and tyranny increases, in the aggregate. In the aggregate, because if you apply the principle of correspondence and the principle of mentalism, which you can apply, all of them, then if people are buying or people are believing in incorrect forms of morality, if people are buying into subjective form of morality, what is that going to create in in the correspondence? If the individual is buying, into it, and majority of them are, then what is that going to do to the aggregate? The aggregate is going to buy, into it, which creates the condition of slavery. And when we say slavery, we're just talking about the conditions, because conditions can be changed. We're not talking about, this is the 100% way of things. We're talking about the conditions, because conditions lie within the mind. Hell, that's why government calls itself the state. Well, what is the state of the mind of people who believe in external authority? They have an incorrect uh, notion. They have incorrect knowledge. They have incorrect information. And therefore, with incorrect information, you're going to lead to incorrect behaviors. And that's one of the techniques in mind control is you give someone a limited set of data. You give someone a limited set of information. You give them limited knowledge. So when they go to construct their worldviews, once those neural pathways are starting to, to form, that's going to create an inaccurate form of objective reality. And that's pretty much what has happened now. And that's what happened to the physical slaves is they gave them an incorrect version of reality by giving them incorrect knowledge and saying, hey, you was born to be a slave. It's your right to be a slave. It's our right for us to own you. Then therefore, what happens? And you usually do this when when you are very young, within the first 7 years, because you're just going to soak in all the information. Then therefore, as you get older, you're going to construct and build those worldviews, and then you're going to build belief systems. And therefore, it's going to be harder to erode or degrade those neural pathways. And that's why a lot of people don't want to change the way they think, because that's really what we are trying to do, is not really change the way they think, but influence how they think and steer them toward the right, how the right flow in this pendulum swing toward objective morality, toward principles, toward doing the shadow work, because the shadow work is also another important aspect, like of this is people are trying to still behave in the same manner, but you have to go within yourself to erode and fix your own forms of trauma. You have to fix your own inconsistencies that are internal. So it's kind of like two aspects. You have the objective morality aspect and the shadow work aspect of something that a lot of us do, talk about, because without the shadow work, aspect, then you're really not going to make it, too much for, too much further, because those traumas are going to always keep coming up to the surface. You know how those problems are going to keep coming up to the surface. So
Yeah, attachment to falsity. So you create false mental constructs. You have a false reality, an unreality that you live by. So when you live by an unreality, well, your actions and behaviors are going to be representative of that false reality, that unreality that you hold within as your inner reality. So the outer reality will become a reflection. This is the principle of correspondence again. As within, so without. This is one way it applies. So whatever you hold inside will influence your behavior, and that's what you will create based on. So when you believe in false things, you will create a false reality externally, and that's the world we live in.
Well, isn't it also though that like to some degree we can't know the truth about things? Like for example, earlier we in another meeting we talked about the idea of like owning an Apple computer. Well, Apple computer, they employ slaves in China to assemble the products, and then they also apply like materials that come from, basically slave operations doing mining and stuff like that. And so isn't that immorality? Uh, basically like we're buying stolen property, when we buy a Apple computer. So are we participating? Are we, like if we're going to use this standard of objective morality, then then there's these then like we can't really do anything because everything everything around us is essentially stolen property.
right, and that's the unfortunate thing about it, is they have created this environment that we all have been brought up into, to where at some form we are living off someone else's exploitation at some level of degree. So the best thing that you can do is to start to become conscious and understand the consciousness, the pattern recognition, and the awareness that is involved, and figure out where is it that you can pull your efforts back and make those choices. As far as like hell with the Apple stuff, yeah, how Apple is one of the worst, and I choose not to partake in their products. But it's not like we have much of a choice. You have what Apples, you have you have Windows, and then you have Linux. So hell, again, it's a limited set of options, because it's limited information. So they only give you a small amount of what's possible. Then compared to, if the consciousness was to shift and the morality was to change, then could be way more means of us doing this stuff, and having more of an abundance of on technology, which hasn't been created off a means of exploitation and fear and and scarcity. And see, like, how that's really the whole problem, is the fear-based, mindset. It's because the slave mindset is based in fear. And that's where most people are. Is fear of change, fear of jumping into the unknown. How they think, oh, all the solutions have to be provided, beforehand. Well, sometimes that's not what how growth is about. Sometimes you may have to jump into the unconscious. Sometimes you may have to jump into the unknown. That's why the courage part, the courage, the willpower, and the care aspect is there. Because yes, sometimes jump into the unknown may means that you may fail, but you at least try. You see, staying in that comfort zone, sort of like where people want to stay now, is the problem. Because staying in that comfort zone, that's where the slave was. He got food, he got clothing, he got a house. Why try to run away from the plantation? He had it good. Hey, prisoners can be comfort. You know, prisoners can be comfy, but is it moral? Is it the right way? If someone suffering at at someone else's gain. So the best thing that we can try to do is try to pull your efforts back as much as you can, by way with government, by way with hell supporting some of these big time corporations that are exploiting the planet and exploiting hell nature and exploiting other human beings. But yeah, at some level we are all partaking like into the slavery system, some way more than others, like the older followers, how the people who work at these big time corporations. And then, some of us are trying to pull our efforts back and trying to live a more moderate life based in right livelihood. And it really is tough. Like eh, it's
I can
not
attest to
easy.
that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Frick, I can attest to it too, because it does require sacrifice. You know, sacrifice is required. Like we are going to have to give up some things. We are going to have to lose some things, unfortunately. So what is it that we are willing, have to give up? The good thing about, with the technology that we have now, and I do understand that, majority, is coming from immoral effort, but we have the ability to try to reach minds and influence minds. And that right there is how the main goal is to use this technology, because without it it would just be a word of mouth, and then it would be like the old days, like how could we reach people hell across the hell across the planet, so I totally hell, understand the component, because we all at some level um still rely on someone else's exploitation. But that's what we are trying to change, because we can do better. We can do better. As
Yeah,
a whole.
and
Well, go
that's the
ahead.
realization, like you said, Michael. You realize that you are participating in, although unwillingly and involuntarily, in we call it immorality, slavery, evil. Well, that's what has to become your goal, is doing the great work, which is to end evil, to end the immorality, to end the slavery. And so we use this technology in order to help other people gain the understanding that we have, in order to reach that goal of eventually, centuries from now, thousand, who knows how long it's going to take. It looks like it's going to take a really long time at the rate it's going now, but that's the goal that we're all working towards, is to end evil, which is the book by Jeremy Locke, whether it's a pen name or a real name. That's the goal, is to end evil, to end immorality, to end the slavery that is continually perpetuated across this planet, and to free everyone. And it's a lofty goal. It's big. That's why it's called the great work. And if you want to counteract your involvement in the immorality that we are coerced into, then that's that's the behavior to engage in order to counteract that level of involvement, is to, you're not going to do it by yourself. So it's not like, as you stated, that we can't do anything, but we can do something. We can't flick our fingers and make the world change all by ourselves as one individual, but all together, or a majority, can make that happen. So that's the goal, is we have to influence minds to change themselves. That's the first part of the great work. That's the alchemy. And then the second part is to use what we've understand and how we've changed ourselves, in order to, again, influence others, just as we were influenced ourselves by others who took it upon themselves to share information. And then that snowballs and it builds up, and eventually that's how we reach our goal, to end evil.
Well,
Well,
I do think you guys made it. Go ahead, sorry.
I would just say that I Richard Grove has said on a number of occasions that the English language is a slave language, and that many of the words that we use are kind of made the way that they are because they kind of create misunderstanding more than they allow understanding. And so that is also, I think, one of the tasks that we have. And I think this was a demonstration of that, is that a lot of the words that we use have, and especially words that have like multiple definitions. It's extremely hard for people maybe to wrap their minds around concepts when words have multiple meanings. And I do feel like a lot of what we're having confusion about is because people come from different perspectives, people come from different experiences, and when we expect people to have an understanding of words, uh, I was just I was just listening to an interview I did with Dale Brown a few years ago, and he's from Detroit. I'm from Gary, Indiana originally, and I was interviewing him, and I said some things about Detroit, and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! You don't know about Detroit. I've lived my whole life there, you know." So let me give you some, because like some of the things you said, those aren't necessarily true. And I was basically saying that, Detroit has seen better days. When the car industry was in the, heyday, Detroit was like, the the most richest place on the planet. And that was where I was coming from. And he was saying, well, for some people, but for other people, it's still that way. And so uh that was like I had to just take his lead and listen to gain his perspective that, he's proud of Detroit, and he's proud of where he is, even in the situation that exists. The fact that he's making an impact and making it better every day means that, for him, he's, he's doing what he thinks is the right thing. And, to some degree, I this is where that objective morality comes into play, because like some of the things he does, are like a voluntarist would say, no, no, you don't do it that way. But he's trying to do the right thing. I mean, he dedicates his life every single day to do the right thing. And I can't really, I can't really judge him for that, because he has demonstrated, as Ryan says, there's physical evidence that he's succeeded, and there's people that are better off because of it, because of his actions. But they may fall into that gray area where, like, or maybe it's not the gray area when it comes to objective morality of, doing something that's uh, immoral. And that's where I think, I'm trying to relate like the real experience, because I am like a dedicated anarchist, a voluntarist through and through. And I have made all the freaking sacrifices. I basically threw it all away to like do the right thing. And it's freaking hard. I am struggling my ass off. I'm living very modestly to try and pull it off, to not engage in damaging other people. And it's incredibly hard. And it's a thankless job too, no one's over here slapping me on the back because I'm doing it. But nevertheless, I'm doing it because I feel better about myself. And I have gone through the thing where I was trained as a killer in the US Army, and I spent 9 years, essentially being a slave to that system. And the day I got free of that, I celebrated tremendously. But then I ended up finding out that, this is a much bigger system than I thought. That I thought I'd got myself loose from. But I can say, you know, I appreciate the time and effort you guys are making. And I do feel like it is something that we do need to work on. I don't think we're done. I think we just got started, you know, and it's a it's a hard slog. But I would ask that you be patient with people, because, like I said, you know, we've got a language that's not benefiting us greatly. In fact, I think it's holding us down in many ways. And that's just another one of the mechanisms that, you know, we've got to overcome.
I have a different view. I view language as great. It's the only tool we have. It's a great tool for communicating our understanding, whether it's false or accurate, and then we hash it out with others. And we always have to reference it, correspond it to reality in order to verify it and demonstrate it as such. And then we build upon that. And without language, imagine how you could convey things to people and build up understanding without language. It can have flaws, but it's an amazing tool.
I don't disagree with you. Are you familiar with Alfred Korzybski's work?
No. Oh, I've heard the name, but I don't think I've looked into
I mean, he
it.
used one of his favorite sayings, the map isn't the territory. That's his.
Yeah. Yeah, it never is, but that's our goal, is to try to approximate as much as we can the actual territory. It'll never be 100%, but that's by moving around our perspective in 360 degrees, we can move around and look at things from different viewpoints in order to gain additional uh, perspectives of the thing, in order to more accurately describe in greater detail what it is we're looking at and attempting to convey that exists in reality. That is the territory. So our map can refine and become, instead of just a 1% uh, accuracy for you know, if we divide it into grids, subsection, grid one, subsection G, whatever, and then we look at that one particular thing, and we can start off at a 5% accuracy of the totality of what it is, and then we can maybe get to 50%, and that's an improvement over what we were, and we can better reflect that understanding to other people through the conveyance of what it is using language. So I uh, I really appreciate language, our species, what we have been able to create in order to gain a greater understanding and build upon what exists in reality and create new technology, just like what we're sharing with today and the computers and everything.
Yeah, well, I would encourage you to check out General Semantics. It's Alfred Korzybski's kind of life work, and it's one of those things that's been occulted, and to a large degree, I think the social engineers certainly understand Korzybski's work, and you know, I think that's why we find ourselves in this circumstance where we're constantly, you know, like the trendy words keep keep us, you know, in a state of misunderstanding and confusion.
Yeah, that's why we have George Orwell, 1984. They're trying to limit and constrict the definition of words, and that's what uh, who's the Minority Report author, Imposters, Android's Dream of Richard K. Dick. Yeah, he has a
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
of if you limit the definition of words, you limit uh, people's ability to understand reality, something like that. So it's a direct correlation between your ability to comprehend existence through the language. So that's why it's important to define things. And something I've identified over a decade ago is semantic misunderstandings. When you converse with someone and they don't understand what you're saying, or you say something and they have an objection, it's you either failed to convey it in enough detail, or there's these definitions that are conflicting, where they hear a word that you say and they interpret it in a certain way, and then you but you mean it in one way, but then you have to get down to that. And I've had discussions with someone at the time that I used to know, and we used to have semantic misunderstandings. And then when he'd retort with something, and I'd be like, I think we've identified another semantic misunderstanding. Let's try to get to the bottom of it. And that's basically what I've attempted to convey here. And so I would go through, okay, well, I said this, and how do you how do you define like this word? Okay, we have that. Okay, what about this one? And then it's pretty laborious, but then eventually you get to that word that created the incongruence, the contradiction between the two maps we're trying to align and share with each other, and that sets us off on different paths. And then we realign, and then we're back on the same path, trying to share that common ground and common knowledge of where we're walking, the trajectory in reality, of what we perceive in reality.
Yeah, well,
Well,
I got to listen to this, and I tried to listen very carefully, and I appreciate the amount of time and effort you spent, and but I also appreciate Ryan's point of view, because I do feel like there are there 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 are words that mean certain things, and if we're going to call them certain things, because one of the things we're going through in autonomy is the ultimate history lesson, and kind of how we got to where we are as far as our school system and stuff, and to a large degree, like the philosophical, the theological, and the science has led the I don't know if you want to call them the ruling class or the parasite class to a particular ideology in which they think they're doing the right thing, but it's through these manipulation of these ideas into like, well, if the science says it is, but that there's some particular things about the science that we can, try and shave off to make our point of view the correct one. But if we do that, we run the risk of basically doing the same damn thing that they've done to create the reality that we're trying to overcome now.
yeah, what I'll definitely say is I think you guys did a good job of getting to the point of the societal definition that Nick gave earlier on. But because of the very real issues with verification, like the informational gray zone, numerous ways that things can actually be sort of stratified via, in-group, out-group preference stuff and all that sort of stuff, where you can get an internal stability for one group that uses all this stuff, and yet they do not use it for an out-group. Which is very common and known aspect of psychology, including for some animals anyways, certainly not all. That's where it's like, yeah, this is why I was saying I don't have a problem with the idea. My major thing was that objectivity aspect of it. So as the societal definition, sure. Certainly if we use your guys' definitions of harm, which could be expanded. And so I could go back, for example, to the trans question of, hey, these people feel it in their body, as Nick put it. If you offend them, you could, there's no reason you couldn't expand the definition to say that and say that's physical harm. You could actually show chemical changes in their body and all these other things, and you could say, hey, see, look, it's physical harm. But I will not deny that as a societal definition for generally stable society, yeah, I don't think you're incorrect on that. But to really make that claim that this is baked into physics, I really don't see that. But either way, you actually did move me a little tiny bit further than I was before. I won't deny that. But I will also say that you also, in your explanation, did the exact same thing that I have had done to me through other people that I've had philosophical debates with, when their position is very clearly wrong and they've gotten to the point where they know it. Because you meandered around and gave all these little examples of things, and you wouldn't just get to the point. And that's why I eventually got frustrated and was just like, get to the point, divine this thing. Because I've seen this before. I've seen this talking to people about, prove your religion is real, when they're coming at me saying it's real and stuff like that. It's the exact same behavior. And I've had enough objective morality debates with people who did exactly the same thing. They won't get to the yes or no question. They won't answer that. They'll avoid it. And that's why when you just were responding with, is slavery a thing? Then I was like, I'm done. Because typically that's where you can tell. You give them a yes or no question, they refuse to answer. And then, it's like the answer is no. The answer is that that you're wrong. I've seen that a bunch of times. So that is basically why I reacted that way. But yeah, I think you guys did an okay job. I do think you could have this does not need 500 hours or 10 hours or anything. This is basically, a bullet point list of, if you believe physical violence is okay and you act in a way that causes physical violence, and then you have a group of 10,000 people doing that and you all live together, generally speaking, you're going to have more physical violence in your area because all of you believe it and actually do it in reality. That's it. You don't need 500 hours or 9 hours or anything. One of the major criticisms of Passio's 9-hour thing is pretty much all of it is him just making assertions without providing a basis for why those assertions are true. And that's honestly what I was hearing a lot of here initially. But I will say in the end, you did sort of wrap it up a bit and finally get to that little bit of a point of, hey, well, if everyone believes that slavery is okay and they thus their behaviors are enslaving in some way, then you're going to get an aggregate of people doing that, and thus they're going to be enslaving each other. It doesn't really take that long. So either way, I thank you guys. I thank you for being patient and answering my questions to the best of your ability, even though technically you still kind of admitted that it's not really objective. But either way, you still gave something satisfactory that is worthwhile, in my opinion.
So you prefer just answer a question and work backwards from there if there's still misunderstanding. I took the approach of building forward based on the foundations to build up and arrive at the conclusion, because I could see that there were, if I just gave a conclusion, you wouldn't have all the words I would use in the conclusion. Well, the definitions wouldn't have been provided. So that's why I built
Yeah,
up to the end. You prefer
that makes
to be
sense. But
quick to just say the punchline and then explain it when there's further misunderstanding.
yeah, and I say that specifically because I have seen that as a tactic used when someone does not want to answer a question. They will just go around and define. This is where you get well, it depends what the definition of is, and like that sort of a thing. So I've experienced that a lot, and so I was sitting there just being like, "Oh my God, get to the point!" It was just another one of those types of people. That's all I could sort of see from it, because because I've had this happen so many times, and where the person will never answer a question. They just go around in circles and, oh, but it depends on the definition, and you don't have the right knowledge. And so yeah, but like I said, technically you still admitted it's not actually objective because it
So
does not happen
wasn't
in
it
reality,
objective?
but
Clarify.
because it's entirely being done by the people and it depends on their ability to verify information and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's numerous other issues in terms of informational gray
You're
zones,
talking
and I
about the
could bring up some of the
consequence, right? The consequence.
the consequence thing is really what it rests on. If the consequence isn't happening just in reality, then by definition, this cannot be, an objective thing.
No, but the objective morality has nothing to do with the consequences at first. The consequences have to do with understanding the law of freedom, which is a subset of natural law. But the primary subset of natural law.
Lao Tzu, or maybe it's Lao Tzu again. If the existence of a thing is indistinguishable from its non-existence, we say that thing does not exist.
So
that's
what
what
are you
this
referring to? Correlate that with the discussion.
The consequences. The consequences only happen, when people are involved. So therefore, they're not just baked into reality.
Yeah, but we weren't talking about consequences originally. Your original thing was
but
define
without the consequences, there's no observable evidence that this morality even exists. That would be the evidence that there's consequences would be the evidence that the morality is in play. It would essentially be like you can't observe electromagnetism directly, but you can observe the effects. Well, consequences would be the effects.
That's not that's for natural law, not for morality itself. That's for the overall understanding of the concept of natural law. It's not for the understanding of the concept of objective morality. You do not need to explain how the consequences work in order to understand objective morality.
Yeah, no, I don't see how that works at all. That doesn't make any sense in terms of a science. But regardless, like I said, you guys still gave some really good stuff. I think you gave a pretty good explanation of some of the social aspects of that. I do think it could have been really shortened down. It definitely does not use this degree of explanation. But regardless, yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us. And honestly, I don't mind these like long forms of content. And I would also agree with Chris is there is a level of time that needs to be invested in order to grasp what we are saying. And yeah, there is going to be a differential when it comes to understanding because people are going to base how they try to how interpret how what we say based on their own perceptions of definition. So that's why it takes the time to break these things down, define your term, bring up the etymology and stuff like that. Yeah, how that does require time. But hey, some people want it in that short format, and hey, that's why if we had more teachers, how willing to do this, you can have people putting out in the short form and in the long form, and the more, hey, the better. And I would also how distinguish. I don't use the term harm. I just use the term violence because I think that just has more of a hard hitting. It's more distinguishable, than harm. So
Yeah, they're the same. The initiation of harm
yeah,
is a wrong, is a theft, is violence. So
correct.
they're all interchangeable.
Right.
And to just reclarify Ryan's last point, where he says that it requires an understanding of the consequences in order to understand objective morality. I'll reiterate. I'll try quickly that no, it doesn't, because the understanding of objective morality just has to do with understanding property rights and a violation of those property rights. It has nothing to do with when or how to apply the how to see the consequences or how to know if it actually happened. Those are epistemological issues, and then choices to be made on consequences to be applied. The original core of objective morality has to do with being able to determine if a behavior is right or if a behavior is wrong, which precedes a consequence, which is why I'm saying it has nothing to do with the consequence.
All right. So if you go out and you purchase a piece of land and that land was stolen from somebody else, are you perpetuating the immorality because you supposedly own the land, but the land that you bought was stolen land?
Yeah, that's a fraud. There was a fraud committed against you.
So,
You
but
don't
like,
actually own it
but
yeah, go ahead.
like you as the person that bought the land, thinking that it was legitimately owned, or the person that you bought it from was the legitimate owner, but they weren't.
Yeah.
And then, and that's kind of where we're at, because like nobody, if everybody is like everything that we have and is around us is stolen, then we're just perpetuating the immorality. Even if we're trying to do the right thing, we're kind of in this system.
Yeah. Which is why the primary goal is to get people to understand the objective difference between a right and wrong behavior. And then from there, further discussions can be had in order to understand, well, since we're all living on stolen land, how do we settle things that are more equitable for everybody? Like there's ideas of everyone gets 4 acres or something, and so then you don't have to have a job, you don't have to pay taxes, you can provide for your own existence. If you want to be a hermit or whatever amount of acreage, everyone, and then when you're born, you have a certain acreage allotted to you that you can go to, And then you can try to survive on your own, or you can cooperate with other people's in optimized survivability, which is a lot better. But if you want to be a hermit, well, you can go do your own thing, and you're not going to be stolen from, because if you don't pay your property taxes, they come and steal all your shit. You know, there's other things after that basis. The first thing we need to do, that the crux of, quote, natural law, of understanding that overarching concept, is objective morality, is understanding the objective difference of your behaviors that happen in objective reality, whether they are objectively right or objectively wrong. And then with that understanding, we can reformulate how to equalize the wrongs that have been happening or that continue to happen, and stop them from continuing to happen. For example, the taxation, or reformulate a new way of living. And there's plenty of people who've gone into better ways of doing things, like Buckminster Fuller. And so, but the basis that we need to understand, if we're ever going to move forward as a species, is understanding objective morality. And then afterwards, how do we apply consequences for how we've gotten here, and move forward in an agreeable way where we can try to set things right, whatever choices we make to go about doing that.
I'll chime in for a second. I enjoyed your presentation, and I thought it added some value. I didn't mean to come off and pick on you guys. I hope you guys didn't take it that way. I did want to add for Ryan, the thoughts I have. I'm gonna just come out and say it. I believe that there is karmic consequences. I do believe that the reality around you has some intelligence, and may bring back consequences to you that that you don't expect, or that come from other places, or call it God, whatever you want, karmic consequence. I think that there is something to that, and some evidence, not necessarily proof, but for Ryan, I would agree that it's totally subjective. You have to do this work yourself and see how it changes your life on a subjective level. But objectively, I would say that it was just a quick thing to point out, is something like where you had the American Indians. We're talking about the stolen land that we're all living on. Well, at least I'm living on. So I think that talking about that is was it stolen, or was it the thing that the Indians were doing, and they were all warring with each other? There was Indians there that were cutting each other's hearts out and throwing their dead bodies off the pyramids down in Mexico area, where probably not too far from Acapulco, where you guys are. Things like that were going on. The Indians weren't nice to each other. Some of the tribes weren't nice to each other, but I would say that maybe that the bigger, badder guys with the guns, the evil white guys with the guns that came and gave everybody smallpox and shot everybody up, were a consequence to their bad actions that they did to each other. So it's not proof, but it's just something that's observable in reality that we could all talk about. So that's just something there. I do personally believe that. But go ahead.
I understand that sort of argument. That definitely gets into a lot of the danger zone I've always had with the objective morality types of stuff. Is that it becomes very easy to twist things to say, no, see, it's good to do that stuff, because you could use that exact argument, and if I remember correctly, some of the Israelis in fact do, for what they're doing to Palestinians. And I would say, no, how about not? How about, like, this is why I reduce it all down for myself and say, look, I have goals, I have my own set of experiences and everything, and I'm not going to even touch the right or wrong concept. I'm going to just be honest and admit, if I'm doing something, it's because I'm trying to get to some goal, or I'm trying to get it. Basically, I'm doing because I like it, or I like what it does for me. As a martial arts teacher once put it, that's the only reason anyone does anything. They like it, or they like what it does for them. And that does seem to hold up. And because I don't want to be someone at all who's like, I'm a good person, and have that create that implicit set of enemies. I just don't want to do that if I can help it. But I also can't deny, yeah, there could very well be a karmic thing out there. I have yet to see evidence for it. However, I also cannot deny I can see ways it could operate. I just haven't seen it happen. I haven't seen any sort, like, you could argue some of the paranormal stuff I've gone through could be karmic in some way. I would disagree, because it's been all over the place, but you know, yeah. So that's a whole other topic
What,
in some ways.
what kind of evidence you need, Ryan? If a bunch of aliens fly in from space and take a big giant shit on us, would that be evidence for you?
I don't see
It
how
makes
it
me
would be.
wonder, like, the way we behave. I wonder what, it makes me wonder what's going to come in and take this place over. Using that model, I'm just saying, I'm open to
Yeah.
suggestions. I don't really know, and I do
For
agree.
me, it's the like, how would we be able to, like, I'd love to see if there's a way to experiment with it and be like, all right, like, how would you take this and create some sort of hypothesis and stuff that you could test to be like, if you have these people and they do moral things, you should expect some sort of, definable moral result. If you have people who do immoral things, you should have some definable immoral result. And then you could get some stuff going with that. There is some interesting, like, one of the reasons why I say I could see some argument for this is some of the work that's been done with random number generators and quantum scale psychic effects and whatnot, but in that case, that's more the person would have to believe it, in order for a consequence to come back to them. But there's a whole lot of other stuff to that. So yeah, no, that's a whole other topic. Sorry, I shouldn't ramble on so much about this.
If you had a way to measure the body's electromagnetic energy field, then you could prove it as far as when wrong behaviors are done within the individual, the electromagnetic energy field would put off a certain frequency compared to if right behaviors were done, then the body would put off a certain frequency, and not just the individual that the wrong was doing, but any other individual within that capacity would also experience and put off those same frequencies. And hell, I'm just going to go off of speculation. Is there are actually machines that have been created that have been able to prove this? Now, if now is that it is being hidden away from humanity? That's a good possibility too. But yeah, how this has been talked about and in certain aspects, but yeah, because the body does put off an electromagnetic energy field, and frequencies and vibrations are affected by certain waveforms and certain forms of behavior. And if you look at behaviors as a means of a frequency, then there would be some form of effect upon the body's electromagnetic energy field.
There
But
is
then uh but then, like, how could you go about creating that? Because the only person that I know, he wrote a book about it, and it was called The Human Atmosphere, but that was in like the early 1900s, and I'm sure that machine is long gone.
there is a David Hawkins map of consciousness that kind of goes along those lines, which is a kind of study of muscle tension and different frames of mind, from shame at the worst part of consciousness to, I think, enlightenment is the opposite side. So there is some scientific evidence in regard to consciousness.
Yeah, Jeffrey Martin has put together, as far as I'm aware, some of the most comprehensive in terms of some of that stuff. Interestingly, it doesn't always point towards the enlightenment style of thing. There's an interesting phenomenon that people, as they go up as they do more of this, they can become more and more detached and start doing things like, we'll just write off those kids. We're just not going to bother with them anymore. And they can abandon their families and stuff. So it's not always great. But there is definitely some decent science that has been done on some of that stuff. And to the best of my knowledge, Jeffrey Martin has done the most of it and aggregated the most of it, but I could be wrong.
Well, I also want to thank y'all for bringing up, how these terms and how these references, because I can go and he'll learn more hell about these things. And that's one of the good things about talking with other people is hell, they can bring stuff to the conversation that you may not know. Like you just brought up hell Jeffrey Martin. Hell, I can go look at that, and how Michael brought up what hell general hell semantics. So hell, I got this stuff written down, so I can go hell learn hell about these things, and that's what it's uh, all about. So thank you.
And we have recording too, so we can go play it back. So yeah, thanks everyone that showed up. I learned a ton. I had so many questions that were addressed in this. Like I had a lot of questions, and which is why I encouraged it. Go ahead, Kris.
Oh no, I was gonna say, Jerry, where you been?
Yeah, I've been listening. Didn't want to interrupt, but I think what Michael said earlier is so true. This is just the start. I think we definitely moved the compass in the right direction here, and yeah, I mean, I want to do this consistently. I don't know. Are you guys interested in attending if I make this a weekly thing?
I definitely can't promise I would. But yeah, I think it's a good idea overall, but I can't say I personally probably would.
And
Yeah, I'm not sure. I prefer, that's why I do my presentations, so that it's a one-to-many, and anyone who wants to get the information can go through it. Most people aren't aware of it, not many views on my videos, but like what I explained is what's coming up in future presentations, and it's also been explained in past ones. And that's why it's, in terms of my time, explaining things one-on-one to people isn't what I prefer to do. I prefer to put it out, and then anyone can gain from it if they want to invest their time into trying to understand it more if they're interested. Otherwise, doing this, one-on-one to people trying to explain things over and over, it essentially comes down to it's an efficient and an inefficient use of time, as opposed to making a presentation which details it all, and then that's an efficient use where you can provide it to people, and if people have the desire, they can learn about it and gain more of an understanding. And if they're not interested, well, that's on
I
them.
just realized the funny thing about this is Larkin Rose already did a video that is 2 minutes long that would have compressed this entire thing that you talked about into it, which it's called The Entire Problem and Solution in 2 minutes. And it's essentially everything you were going with, but it's like concise, and you really don't need more than that. It is that simple. Again,
Sure.
it doesn't really. He uses the term objective morality. The irony is based on how he explains it, it doesn't actually matter if objective morality exists or not. His logic still works, so I find that kind of neat. But yeah, that's kind of what you guys need, because like I said, you sounded exactly like every religious debate I've ever been in and anything like that, where you wouldn't get to the point, you wouldn't, you kept circling back to define things, and just I've seen it before. So that's why I reacted the way I did, especially when I got to the point of asking the yes or no question.
but remember, hell, this was
Okay.
never a debate to start off with.
And
Well, you weren't answering the
Larkin,
questions. Like I had basic questions of show that this is objective, and it just would never get there, which typically means it's
so
not.
did Larkin show how it was objective? So
No,
I
he
just,
doesn't.
that's my
irony,
point.
though-
In
well,
a
the
2-minute
irony, though,
video,
is in-
if you have the understanding or you have the gist of it, and
yeah, but you also didn't show
know,
how it's objective.
I
The
did.
point is,
I've explained it. Even after you continue to say it's not objective, I even reiterated in 2 minutes how it is objective, and you still can't recognize it. I don't know what to say.
well, yeah, okay, whatever. Fine.
Does it?
Like I do not see how it is objective without showing the objective consequence then, to show the effect, because otherwise there's no difference between the effect being there or not.
We're
I
talking
have an
about the
idea.
definition of
I have an
morality.
idea to settle this. But maybe next week we should have a morality game show, and we'll come up with ideas of situations. And is this situation moral or immoral? We'll put it to you guys, because you seem to be the morality experts. That we should ask you guys. What do you think? Would you be up for that?
Right there in your question, that has nothing to do with consequences. All you're doing is assessing a behavior, which is what morality is about.
Well, yeah, exactly. We're assessing between right and wrong, correct?
Yeah, so that doesn't address.
So then let's come up with situations. We'll postulate situations for you to say if they're right or wrong. Would you
Yeah,
be
but
interested?
that
Tell
has
you this straight up,
nothing to
I'm
do
not
with the-
interested. I've had these debates enough that I'm like, this is exactly why when you guys asked me in the Do It Live, like, well, maybe you want to talk, ask Mark Passio this entire presentation is is essentially my answer of this is why I say no. Because I've had these so many times and I'm just kind of at the point where I'm done. Like I'm done having this conversation. So I'm not going to attend that. This is the last thing of this I'm doing.
Well, that's what I mean. If we come up with situations, you come up with a situation that can't be answered. Oh, we don't know if that's moral, and we have a few people that we can run this past. Then it's not objective morality. Then I would say that in a court, that the court of autonomy, it would fail. No.
Well, again, you can do what ifs until the end of existence. And I also agree with Chris when it comes to valuable time, putting out this information. I too like to put it out in presentations just because with the state of the world, time is valuable. Trying to talk to people one on one and in any form, whether it's face to face or online, in any form of game show or debate, I find meaningless because that's time that's taken away from me being able to put out my craft and educate more people. So as far as how next week, I can't commit to anything because as Jerry knows, my job starts back soon, and I work on weekends. And if it's just going to be debates, honestly, I would rather spend my energy of creating presentations or honing my craft so I can put out a better material so I can educate people because that's where my time is focused because that's going to reach way more minds and help influence them than just coming on here week to week to try to you know prove to someone else that how something is real and how objective. Because with some people it doesn't matter what information and stuff you bring to the
All right.
table, then hell, if their mind is closed off, at some point it's like
That's fine. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I got to roll. My dad's on the move right here, so I'll be. I probably won't be back. So have a good night, guys.
Good night, Nick.
yeah, thanks man, have a he'll have a good night.
I would just offer that, like one of the things that I've learned from following John Taylor Gatto is what I term the John Taylor Gatto clause is the uh, is what he offered to his students, that they could always ask why they're doing something, and through that, uh, he gained a great deal of knowledge. And so I mean, when it comes to the investment of time, the most, I think the best use of time is interacting with people and allowing them to ask questions. I think that's where you really, I mean, that's why teaching is the greatest form of learning, is because you get feedback and you know the words that you use, the terms and the forms that you put into other people's minds, and the feedback that you get gives you uh a better understanding of how you're communicating. And I'm telling you, man, we are in a world where communicating is golden, but because very few people can do it well. And we are living in a world where the medium of communication is being restricted. I mean, like we're talking on this, computer form of communication, and to a large degree, this is not very good. If we were in person with each other, we would be getting a lot more communication through our body language, through eye contact, through all these other forms of communication that we don't get. And so our understanding is inhibited by this technology. And so it is much more difficult to gain understanding in this medium. And so, that's why I certainly credit you guys for being so patient, and having this discussion as we have, uh, because there's a great deal of things that we're missing when it comes to the effort to communicate with others when we're using this medium.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like I just, you know, I plan on doing this weekly. I don't know if it's gonna be on objective morality each week because, like I said, I want to learn this stuff and apply the trivia method. But the way Kris broke it down, it seems like I got most of the knowledge. Now I just have to explain it to somebody else. That's something to work on. But I mean, I can always invite other people in the one great work to come and have these discussions so we can ask them questions and whatnot, see if they're up to it, and ask you in the chat and your videos that you guys drop. I'll ask my questions in there and hopefully get a response to grasp this knowledge better. But I certainly thank you, Brandon and Kris, for taking your valuable time to address our questions. And I agree with you, Michael. John Taylor Gatto is a model, someone I want to aspire to be like to answer my students' questions one day.
Kris, you mentioned your presentations. Where can we find those?
My site is evolveconsciousness.org. And if you go to the infographics tab, there's all the infographics that relate to videos in reverse chronological order. Oh, I'm not sure I added the last three on natural law, but they're on the main page. They're featured at the top, and they're in the latest in the videos section, right under the featured ones. All three are there. So yeah, so they're not hard to find. And then there's the main work you have over there. There's a natural moral law section, and they're at the bottom of there as well. So it's evolveconsciousness.org. Sorry. I'll take Ryan's criticism in as valuable in terms of the answering the question and working backwards in order to save time. That'll be more efficient rather than trying to build up from a foundation and avoid the frustrations on the person asking the question.
How about you, Brandon? Where do you put your work?
My work is on Odyssey, BitChute, the One Great Work Network, and Rumble. I don't post too much on YouTube because they have banned 2 channels of mine. So you can just search my name, Brandon Spencer, or the
Okay.
easiest way is just go onto the One Great Work Network, and then you can click my profile, and you'll see all of my videos. And I also have a playlist on Odyssey that consists of over 300 something videos of natural law by multiple content creators who at least have somewhat of an understanding of what we are trying to convey, with this message of freedom.
Hoorah.
Well, I did say in the Do It Live that I was going to basically study the Kabbalion, and people seem interested. So you guys are always invited. I'll drop the link in the chat if you can make it great. I messaged Joanna Whitney because she's actually putting out videos on the Kabbalion. So I thought she was perfect to come and bring her expertise. So I'll make sure to open the meeting on time. I would say it's gonna be from 7 p.m. Eastern time. Keep it about 2 hours, hopefully, and that's the announcement. Thanks again, Brandon, Kris, everyone here. Thank you for your time, for participating. In the Do It Live podcast, like we can disagree, but I just, you know, think that we should see our commonalities, and that's to fucking be free. Um, I have nothing else. If does anybody have any last words?
I'll end on you can't be free without understanding if your behavior is right or wrong and whether you're creating freedom or you're creating the opposite, which is slavery. Have a good night, everyone. Peace.
Good night.